All right, good morning. Welcome to the Friday, August 9th session of the California Coastal Commission. I want to welcome everyone here this morning and ask for a roll call, please. Waiting. I'm getting the sign. Good morning.
I called. I just. Wanted to see if you needed one.
Okay.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Commissioner Aguirre.
Here.
Commissioner Bochco. Commissioner Cummings.
Here.
Commissioner Escalante.
Here.
Commissioner Harmon.
Here.
Commissioner Lowenberg. Here. Commissioner Nuttall.
Here.
Commissioner Turnbull Sanders.
Here.
Commissioner Uranga.
Presente.
Commissioner Eckerly.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aquí.
Chair Hart.
Present. Thank you very much, Vanessa. All right, we'll move to the virtual meeting procedures, Chris.
All right. Good morning. This Coastal Commission meeting is
Oh,
occurring.
excuse me, one moment. We have two commissioners on Zoom,
All right.
Commissioner Kunkel and Commissioner Harmon. And they're both here, apparently. Are you both here?
Here.
Yes, they are. Or there, wherever you are. They're on Zoom. Okey doke.
Okay.
Now moving forward with virtual meeting procedures. Thank you.
Good morning. This Coastal Commission meeting is occurring both in person and through Zoom. This meeting is also being webcast and can be viewed online at cal-span.org. If you have access to the internet and wish to watch or listen to the meeting only and not speak on an item, we recommend use the CalSpan website. Those who wish to address the Commission today can do so in person, through the Zoom platform, or by phone. The speaker request forms may be found on the Commission's webpage. Paper forms and a scannable QR code for paperless submittal are available on the Commission staff table just outside the meeting room. For those on Zoom, we have posted virtual hearing procedures on the Commission's agenda webpage, which is a guide on providing comments via Zoom or by phone. Members of the public speaking during general public comment may be given up to 2 minutes to speak at the discretion of the chair. Requests to speak during general public comment period will not be accepted after 9 a.m. on each day of the meeting. In order to provide the opportunity for the broadest range of public participation, you may speak on a specific topic one time only each month. Those speaking on an agenda item that is not general public comment are typically allowed 2 to 3 minutes to speak at the discretion of the chair. We will accept a request to speak on an agenda item up until the chair opens the hearing on that particular item. If you have access to the internet, please go to the Commission's webpage and click on the link to fill out a speaker request. If you do not have internet access or prefer to testify by phone, please call the Commission staff at 562-477-9089. Again, that number is 562-477-9089. Staff will provide you with a telephone call-in number and instructions for how to participate and provide testimony by phone. We will manage speakers coming in and out of the meeting through a meeting organizer. When it is your time to address the Commission, the organizer will invite you to turn on your video and microphone or provide instructions on how to unmute the phone. Madam Chair, that concludes the virtual hearing procedures.
Thank you so much, Chris. Folks, I'd like to just take a minute to acknowledge a person who this commission really would not have been able to operate without over these last few years, and that's Vail Kriegsman, who this is her final meeting. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to be here with us in person, but my understanding is she's on Zoom. And I'd just like to say, on behalf of all of us here on the commission, that the public may think maybe it's the executive director, maybe it's the chair, maybe it's the commissioners that are the most important. But I think anyone who calls in or anyone who tries to appear before us knows the most important people are Vale, Kreisman, and Chris. And we are going to miss you so much, Vale. We're so excited for you. Vale is moving on to get a master's in social work, which I think she was probably inspired to pursue after a few years working with the public here at the commission. No, but just seriously, Vale, I just think the world of you, and I know we all do. You have just been so incredible in your work here and dealing with some of the most difficult hearings with literally hundreds and hundreds of people and all sorts of controversy. And you've just been an absolute joy to work with. So on behalf of all of us, I wanted to thank you so much and wish you absolutely all the best in your studies. And we hope to see you when we're up in Humboldt County. And I know our executive director, Dr. Hucklebridge, would like to make a short statement as well.
Thank you, Chair Hart. I just also want to extend my sincere thanks to Vale for all of your time, effort, blood, sweat, tears you've poured into making these commission hearings work for us. For those of you who don't know, I hired Vale. She was one of my very first hires when I became a manager, and clearly one of the best. And I know this is not goodbye, so we will still get to work with you in another capacity, but we're just so happy for you and grateful again for all of your, just again, your work, but that doesn't quite, your heart too, that you put into making these hearings open, accessible, and a place that the public wants to come and feels welcome. I don't want to underestimate that the role you played in making sure that as we navigated Zoom and as we bring the public in, that people feel welcome at our meetings. So thank you, Vale. We're grateful for you and glad that we don't have to say goodbye right now.
Thanks so much, Dr. Hucklebridge. Vale, do you want to just make a couple remarks? Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you both. That was totally unexpected. I'm sorry I can't be there. I'm very sick this week unexpectedly. But it has been very much an honor to work with all of you. And thank you, Kate, for hiring me and giving me the chance. But yes, I will still be helping in the background, just not on the mic or the screen anymore. So thank you so much. It's been lovely. And yes, I was inspired by the public to do social work. So.
That is so funny. Well, you are going to be awesome. You are going to be the best. I know it. So really look forward to seeing you when we're up north. Thank you so much, Vale. Great. All right, Mr. Hudson, will you be presenting the agenda changes?
Yes, thank you. And good morning, Chair Hart, Vice Chair Escalante, and Commissioners. Today's changes are correctly shown in the posted agenda changes memo, and I would note that item 11A is postponed. That is the MRCA appeal of a City of Malibu coastal permit for public access improvements at Lechuza Beach. Item 12A, the State Parks application for native plant restoration in Topanga State Park, is moved to consent. And item 14A, the time extension for the City of Rancho Palos Verdes LCP amendment regarding residential land use changes, is moved to consent. And finally, item 15A is moved to consent. This is the CDP application for the Ismail residence development in Playa del Rey in the City of Los Angeles. Madam Chair, that concludes the agenda changes for today.
Thanks so much, Mr. Hudson. All right, we'll open the hearing for general public comment. My understanding is that there are 11. Is that correct, Chris?
6 speakers.
6, okay. Are there any here in the room?
We have 2 in the room.
All right, great. Could you call them up? And then we'll go to Zoom.
All right, we have Rachel Wilson and then Lee Harrison.
Yes, and I have a PowerPoint also.
Give us a second to bring it up.
Okay. My name is Rachel Wilson. Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and awesome staff. And I want to let you know that your awesome staff, 3 days ago, when I called them on this, they are already on top of this, but they said you'd like to know about this. Next slide, please. In 50 years, I have been walking on the Cayucos Morro Bay Strand Beach. It is a dog-friendly beach. My dog has a 3-hour commitment on the beach a day. Loves the beach. As it's contracted, she gets upset if we don't do that. Anyway, if you notice, the houses are really high up on the bluff. Next slide, please. And you will see my dog. I was sitting down on the beach next to that rock and reading a book, because I don't walk all 3 hours, and a fellow came running up to me, this is about a month ago, and he said, "Get off of my beach. I own this beach." And I said, "What?" But I really wasn't in the mood to get into an argument, so I decided I'd move away from the rock, and I would sit on a piece of driftwood on the beach. By the way, we're really lucky. We have a lot of beach, so I'm not complaining. And he came over and he shoved my dog and he said, "You can only walk in the water." And I'm like, "Really?" And then I looked up and noticed he was in a short-term vacation rental, called the owner of the short-term vacation rental, and it was taken care of. But it happened again with another person, and so this time I was prepared. So next slide, please. I said, "Why do you think you own this beach?" And he said, "Well, I just bought this house. Look at this map here." Or you need to look at the map. So I went up and I looked at the county map. And it looks like these people own all the way even in the water at times. And then I thought back, I have access to a coastal beach bluff house, and I quite often walk down the stairs there. And I've had people in panic. "Oh my gosh, we didn't realize anybody was here. We will move." You know, they got their whole kit for the day. And I said, "Actually, I was bringing you a bowl of water for your dog. I'm a dog person, what can I say?" So I realized that in previous generations, these homes were transferred generationally to new people. Now people from out of the area are buying them. So I think we need to have some education, like realtors, letters that go out that explain to people, and also a note on the beach access sign that says, "Yes, you may sit on this beach." Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Lee Harrison, and then our Zoom speakers are Lorna Moffett, Brian Rosen, and Janet Rogers. Lee Harrison.
Good morning. I also have some slides.
Yes, give us a second to bring it up.
Good morning, Commissioners. It has been actually a few years since I've been in front of you, so it's really a pleasure to be back again. And what I wanted to do was to bring you up to date on Camp Emerald Bay on Catalina Island, which is operated by the Western Los Angeles County Council Boy Scouts of America. This year we begin celebrating 100 years on the island. So I wanted to tell you a little bit of the story of what we're doing and how we're delivering on the programs of trying to serve as many youth as we can. There are 4 key pillars of what our program is about, which is leadership, character development, citizenship, and personal fitness. And we do that by teaching on island ecology and marine sciences, trying to give young people new experiences in the outdoors, and team building activities. This year, we anticipate serving over 12,000 youth and their families through 3 different programs. Next slide. Those programs are our scouting program in the summertime. We work with a lot of community groups on the weekends to provide programming. And then we do our own school-based science camp, and we focus on the NGSS. And we try to also target a lot of the Title I schools in Southern California, Los Angeles in particular. Next slide. This year, we anticipate giving out a total of $665,000 worth of scholarships. We go out and raise the money from the community to make that happen. That served our outdoor academy about $46,000, community groups $144,000, and summer $475,000. And that goes to outreach to bring young people into the program that wouldn't normally have access to the coastal area. Next slide. community groups that we have worked with in the last couple of years, just as an example, the East Long Beach YMCA, we give a full scholarship to the youth that come there. Camp Hope, which is a Ventura County based program for children who are exposed to violence. The Single Moms Planet, which is focused on single moms with children. Shoot, can I go a little further? Okay. We have Sunburst Academy, which is working with the OC Education and the National Guard. We are Ocean Cancer Survivors. And then the last two are local native tribes who are focused on marine sciences. And then the last slide is actually a thank you to the Coastal Commission. We got I got a grant from you, and that helped us to do outreach into the East San Fernando Valley and to the East Long Beach area to provide programmings to kids who hadn't been out to the island before. And our last slide is that we do some work with the MPA Collaborative, and then we do a lot of work on the coastal cleanup in the area too. So thank you very much.
Thank you
Appreciate all your
so
help.
much for this great work and for bringing it to our attention. It's
Thank you, I
awesome.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you. Next, Lorna Moffett, who's joining via phone. You're allowed to unmute now.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. I want to thank the staff for recommendation to vote no on the SURF MST bus line project in Monterey. Standing up to our local politicians in Monterey, all hell-bent on developing our coastline at all costs, is a daunting task, but a necessary one if we are to help save our sanctuary from our overheating and acidification. I have taken the MST bus line for 30 years until recently when it became so time-consuming with transfers and broken route services. Mr. Cedric, the manager of MST, has done a great disservice of dismembering bus service throughout the city. The bus line to Carmel Valley, which I take and used to take from the plaza, I didn't need to get off and transfer. 2 years ago, they broke that route up. They make you take one bus to Carmel Rancho at the mouth of the valley. Then you have to cross the busy street and wait 15 minutes for the next bus to take you to the valley. In rain and wind and cold and heavy traffic whizzing by, that's pretty hard going. Sometimes the bus is late, and then you have to wait an hour for the next bus to take you to the village. This is going on throughout the city. When I called and asked why, they said they couldn't afford otherwise, but they can afford a $91 million surf project, which tears up the second largest, rarest, ecological precious sand dunes in California. The MST bus surfway, this is a mentality that we are dealing with in Monterey, and there is no one, not one politician, standing up for our dunes or our bay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker, also on the phone, Brian Rosen. Brian, you should be able to unmute.
Hello, Commissioners. Yesterday, when I heard Lorna Moffett talk on the Space Force thing, much of it was blanked out. And then I was told that much of what I said in the earlier public comment was blanked out, that you couldn't hear me. So if that's your perception of how I came across last time, would you allow me to redo my comment? That's what I'm asking you. Am I allowed to redo my comment?
Well, you're commenting now, so why don't you go ahead and tell us what's on your mind?
Okay. Thank you very much, because yesterday apparently it was blanked out.
Okay, so why don't we reset the clock at 2 minutes, and then just please make your comments, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you for the wonderful analysis by staff on the Surf Busway project. Could a few issues be considered in the report? I've inspected the area and found there's only a traffic backup on weekday mornings during the rush hour from 7:10 to 9 a.m. and only occurring on southbound Highway 1. The other direction flows okay. I found out traffic flows okay the rest of the time. And this freeway is set in the Highway 1 that has 3 lanes on both sides. The rest of Highway 1 for miles has 2 lanes on either side. And those other sections, there's a lot of a traffic problem, and it would be too expensive to make all that area 3 lane. It would be almost billion. One section flows better. So I'm just asking to have the staff revisit the site, time to verify what I say. It seems a bus on shoulder and carpool lane would only be needed on the southbound direction from 7 to 9 a.m. And it's feasible to do so. And if this could be addressed carefully in the report, I would really appreciate it. Also note the great access to the state park from the rail loop that is occupied by the hand cars. A similar rail starting in Playa to enable elderly, disabled, and disadvantaged community the best possible access to the park. If railroad tracks are removed, such access will be precluded. The analysis on precluding rail doesn't seem May 17th letter by Kevin Kahn. Can you please make it absolutely clear in the analysis whether the commission would allow additional development and further disruption of the dunes to reroute the rail along? There's room under the 8th Street Bridge to accommodate both uses without removing essential tracks. And please let facts guide what's your decision, not powerful area politicians who are hell-bent on doing the SURF project lest they lose state and federal funds for the county. These tangents deserve maximum protection. And thank you very, very much for listening.
All right, thank you. Janet Rogers.
I have a slideshow, and I'll move fairly quickly through it. Thank you. I'm Janet Rogers with the Embarcadero Coalition in San Diego. Next slide. This map shows the so-called scenic views and view corridors in the Port Master Plan update, but I'm going to show that they aren't real. Scenic views are eliminated, waterside scenic views are replaced with balcony views, view corridors are shown that don't exist and won't be created. The map is not true to life. Next slide. The scenic views are wide angle, not narrow corridors, and the PMPU is eliminating them with a massive number of boats. Next slide. The scenic view at the Hilton Bayfront, here today, gone tomorrow, bursts for 35 big luxury yachts planned. Next slide. The Central Embarcadero is not in the PMPU, probably a Coastal Act violation, but the Seaport project will destroy these views. 167 boats planned. No wonder the port left it out. Next slide. There are no public scenic views at the Marriott Marquis private marina. Next slide. The last open scenic view in the North Embarcadero is in front of the county building. The window to the pier bay with 85 transient boat slips will eliminate this view. Next slide. View corridors show water for the full width. Next slide. Ash and A streets may get a little better, but B Street doesn't have a view now. Next slide. When the Navy leaves, B Street still won't have a view because of the building on the pier. Next slide. E, F, or G streets don't have view corridors. None today, none tomorrow. Next slide. Broadway view corridor, none today, none tomorrow. See the building on the pier. Next slide. The C Street view corridor looks like a private entrance to the Lanefield hotels with no water view. Next slide. Public access needs to be real, not fake lines on a map. Please reject the San Diego PMPU. Thank you.
Thank you. And we just had one name that we weren't able to locate in the Zoom meeting, Charlie Carno. Charlie Carno, if you can, please raise your hand. If you're on the phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. Okay, I'm seeing no hands raised. Madam Chair.
Thanks so much, Chris, and I want to express our gratitude to the folks here in the room for coming down, and also to the people on Zoom. We really appreciate hearing from you during our public comment. It's really important, so thank you very much. All right, and we'll now turn to item 5, Sea Level Rise Policy Guidance Update Public Review Draft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item is going to be presented by Kelsey Ducklow on Zoom today. She's the Commission's Coastal Resilience Coordinator. And so, Kelsey, take it away.
Thank you. Yes, I'm here to present on the Coastal Commission Sea Level Rise Policy Guidance Update. You can skip ahead to slide 2. To start with a little bit of background, in August of 2015, the Sea Level Rise Policy Guidance was unanimously adopted by the Commission to provide information and recommendations for how to address sea level rise in the context of the Coastal Act and in various Coastal Commission planning and permitting processes. Specifically, it includes a set of guiding principles for addressing sea level rise, a summary of sea level rise science, step-by-step processes for addressing sea level rise in local coastal programs and applications for coastal development permits, a library of adaptation options, a discussion of the legal context of adaptation planning, and several additional appendices with more detailed scientific information and resources for stakeholders. In 2018, the guidance was updated to reflect evolving science, including the 2017 Rising Seas in California report and the related 2018 State Sea Level Rise guidance from OPC. In both instances, and again now, work on the sea level rise policy guidance was supported through funding from NOAA, and we continue to thank our federal partner for this support. Next slide. Now the policy guidance is being updated again to address three main topics: best available science to reflect the updated state guidance adopted by OPC in June, Senate Bill 272, which requires local governments to incorporate sea level rise plans as part of new or updated LCPs, and further requires the Commission to adopt guidelines for these plans, and to add additional environmental justice considerations. The draft update is included as Exhibit 1 of the staff report and is available on the website as shown. Note that the draft update includes color-coded highlights of updated language. Science updates are highlighted in yellow, SB 272 updates are highlighted green, and EJ updates are highlighted in blue. We also made a few other targeted updates, for example, to reflect newer agency resources, and these updates are highlighted gray. Where significant portions of text have been updated, the section or title is highlighted. Chapter title. Today I will briefly discuss changes related to science, but we'll spend the bulk of the presentation on SB 272 updates. I will also highlight some of the EJ changes, but these updates will be the topic of a more thorough briefing next month. All of the updates are summarized in the staff report for this item. Next slide. Before I get into the details of the update, I want to provide a primer on how we got here and what's next. Updates to the policy guidance began in earnest early this year. Drafting was done by a core team of folks from our statewide planning unit, our Sea Grant and NOAA fellows, the EJ team, and technical services unit, along with a variety of coordination and review from others across the agency. In addition to internal coordination, the team has done extensive external coordination throughout this process. This includes with OPC as it relates to the science updates to ensure that both the state sea level rise guidance and our policy guidance would be aligned. We've also done a lot of coordination with BCDC staff related to SB 272, and the EJ updates involved coordination with a team of EJ advisors. We also coordinated with the local government working group. Once an early draft was completed, it was shared with these stakeholders as well as a variety of other state agencies through the Sea Level Rise State and Regional Support Collaborative. We received a variety of comments, all largely supportive of the overall updates, and with recommendations for clarifications, updates, or other additions, which we often took as suggested. With today's introduction to the draft update, we are kicking off our public review period, which will be open until September 23rd. Following the public comment period, staff will update and revise the draft, and the intent is for the revised draft to be considered for adoption later this year. Next slide. Starting with the Sea Level Rise science updates, as was the case in 2018, these changes are driven by updates to the state sea level rise guidance from OPC, which in turn was driven by updated research from both the IPCC at the global level and NOAA at the national level. These updates happen on an approximately 5-year basis, and it has been and will continue to be important to continue to update the Commission's sea level rise policy guidance to reflect our continuously evolving understanding of the best available science on sea level rise. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go into detail on the new science and how the current scenarios were developed, but for those interested in more information, you can view a recording of a presentation OPC made to the Coastal Commission at the February hearing on the CalSpan website. Next slide. That said, I do want to highlight a few key updates. Most importantly, we have new sea level rise amounts. Shown to the right are the statewide average scenarios for each decade through 2150, and both the OPC and our guidance include similar tables with projections localized to each of the tide gauges along the California coast. Similar to the 2018 guidance, OPC has provided recommendations for which scenarios to use in different contexts, and our guidance reflects those recommendations and provides additional detail. I do want to note that while there has been some terminology changes, specifically the intermediate high, and high scenario language you see here, as opposed to risk aversion projection language from the 2018 guidance, the overarching framework for how to consider and use sea level rise scenarios has not changed. Next slide. Keen observers may have noticed from the table that the sea level rise amounts are slightly lower than in the 2018 guidance, and there is no distinct H++ scenario. These changes specifically reflect our better understanding of the potential for extreme sea level rise. In the 2018 guidance, the H++ projection, which was a curve that amounted to approximately 10 feet of sea level rise by 2100, was included as a standalone projection without a probability to reflect early research into the possibility that certain mechanisms associated with Antarctic ice sheet melt could result in extreme sea level rise. These mechanisms remain less well understood than other sea level rise dynamics, but the current scientific understanding is that they are unlikely to result in extreme sea level rise by 2100, though they could come into play in the decades immediately following. Thus, it is not that H++ has been removed so much as those extreme amounts of sea level rise are possible slightly later than previously thought, and the relevant physical mechanisms are reflected in the intermediate high and high scenarios rather than as a standalone projection. Next slide. I mentioned a second ago that our overarching framework for how to use sea level rise scenarios remains unchanged. And while that is true, we did take the opportunity to address some ongoing confusion by expanding the discussion around the difference between analysis and design. Beginning with the 2015 guidance, we have highlighted the importance of taking a precautionary approach by analyzing and understanding higher end sea level rise amounts. Similar to the 2018 guidance, the current guidance includes specific recommendations to include the intermediate scenario in technical analyses for development that would have limited consequences or a higher ability to adapt, such as some ancillary development or public access amenities. The intermediate high scenario for development that would experience greater consequences and or have a lower ability to adapt, such as most residential and commercial structures. And the high scenario for development with little to no adaptive capacity that would be irreversibly destroyed or significantly costly to repair and or would have considerable public health, public safety, or environmental impacts should that level of sea level rise occur, such as most critical infrastructure. While it is important to understand the risks associated with these amounts of sea level rise, it may not always be possible or appropriate to design development to avoid all risks associated with those amounts. A discussion has been added to the guidance to explain that a variety of interrelated factors affect decisions regarding project design that may support or necessitate initially designing for lower sea level rise amounts and incorporating requirements to adapt in some manner if higher but less likely sea level rise scenarios come to pass. For example, designing a bridge to account for extreme long-term sea level rise may result in significant wetland impacts due to larger footprints from larger support structures. Similarly, small parcel sizes or presence of ESHA may limit setbacks or development configuration. Like most planning on the coast, project decisions will ultimately require a careful balancing act of various trade-offs. Next slide. Other science updates to the guidance are summarized in the staff report for this item and on this slide. The main updates include new tables of sea level rise scenarios throughout the document, updated background information, and a few refinements on the consequences of sea level rise, including more discussion on groundwater change. We also took the opportunity to rewrite Appendix B to simplify, clarify, and generally make this technical information more readable. Next slide. Moving on to the updates related to SB 272. This is legislation to support sea level rise adaptation that was passed into law in October of 2023. In short, it requires local governments to develop sea level rise plans by January 1st, 2034. In the Coastal Commission's jurisdiction, the legislation specifies that plans should be part of the jurisdiction's LCP, and these will be subject to approval by the Commission. Jurisdictions with approved plans will be prioritized for funding to implement sea level rise projects and strategies identified in the plans. SB 272 also specifies that both the Commission and BCDC must develop guidelines for the preparation of these plans by the end of this year. The updates to the sea level rise policy guidance we are discussing today are meant to fulfill this requirement. Next slide. The language of SB 272 highlights 6 main components that must be included in the sea level rise plans. These include use of best available science, a vulnerability assessment that includes efforts to ensure equity for at-risk communities, sea level rise adaptation strategies and recommended projects, identification of lead planning and implementation agencies, an economic impact analysis of, at a minimum, costs to critical public infrastructure as defined in the legislation, and a timeline for updates as needed based on sea level rise projections, local conditions, identified adaptation strategies and projects, and other locally relevant factors as determined by a local government in coordination with the Coastal Commission. Next slide. These minimum components and SB 272 as a whole relate to both the process of developing or updating an LCP as well as to the policy content of an LCP itself. Specifically, several of the components relate to specific documents like vulnerability assessments and adaptation plans that local governments develop to inform the policies of an LCP, but such documents are not themselves reviewed and certified by the Coastal Commission. While full consistency with SB 272 will require completion of these documents, the mechanism by which the Commission will determine consistency will be certification of the LCP itself. Importantly, many of these components were already recommended as important aspects of sea level rise planning included in the Commission's guidance. In particular, Chapter 5 includes a stepwise process, shown here on the right, for incorporating sea level rise into new or updated LCPs that recommends developing a vulnerability assessment and adaptation strategies, incorporating relevant information into LCP policies, maps, and zoning, and repeating this process with further updates as conditions change. Thus, a framework already exists that complements and overlaps with the new requirements of SB 272. However, several updates were made to better reflect SB 272, as well as to more closely align with how adaptation planning processes have been occurring in practice. These are discussed in greater detail in the staff report, but I want to highlight two key additions. First, boxes were added at the end of each step that summarize how that step relates to the requirements of SB 272. And second, a box at the end of Chapter 5 summarizes the chapter as a whole and highlights the minimum requirements for each of the 6 components and what should be included in the LCP to be fully consistent with SB 272. Before I get into those details, I want to emphasize that the Commission has and will continue to allow for flexibility in completing adaptation planning processes and updating LCPs to address sea level rise. Such flexibility is important not only to reflect the different environments, coastal resources, and contexts along the coastline, but also to reflect the various planning capacities among different jurisdictions. Sea level rise adaptation planning can be a complex and resource-intensive exercise, and the Commission has long emphasized the need to meet and support local governments wherever they are in the process. Consistency with SB 272 will look different in each jurisdiction, and we intend to work in coordination with local governments on these important planning efforts. Next slide. Starting with the first component, SB 272 requires use of best available science. Thus, LCPs must require use of best available science in technical studies to inform risk disclosures and generally to guide decisions. As discussed earlier, the current best available science is the 2024 update to the state sea level rise guidance from OPC. Other key resources for sea level rise information are highlighted throughout the guidance. Next slide. The next required component is a vulnerability assessment that includes efforts to ensure equity for at-risk communities. Vulnerability assessments must use best available science and consider a range of sea level rise scenarios that cover a long-term planning horizon. Jurisdictions must analyze how sea level rise will exacerbate coastal hazards like flooding and erosion, and how these changes will in turn impact coastal resources like critical infrastructure, public access ways, beaches, wetlands, and cultural sites. Assessments must also carefully consider how environmental justice communities may be affected by these impacts. Findings from these analyses should be included in a vulnerability assessment through maps, tables, descriptions, or other quantitative or qualitative information. Next slide. The third component identified in SB 272 is identification of sea level rise adaptation strategies and recommended projects. Jurisdictions have typically developed an adaptation report or plan to accomplish this phase. These reports must use best available science and consider a range of adaptation options, such as nature-based adaptation strategies, retreat and realignment, armoring, and elevation. Analyses must consider and discuss the various pros and cons of these options, consistency with the Coastal Act, how various strategies will have differential impacts to different types of coastal resources, and how they may impact EJ communities. Based on this information, adaptation plans must discuss the applicability and appropriateness of different adaptation options, and jurisdictions must identify a preferred conceptual approach or set of approaches, as well as recommended adaptation projects. Unlike higher-level conceptual ideas, these recommended projects should include more concrete and implementable projects or next steps that are geared for completion in the near term, such as constructing a living shoreline, acquiring land for realignment of a section of coastal trail, or upgrading an armoring structure. I want to highlight here that adaptation planning like this is frequently conducted in a phased and iterative manner with increasing levels of detail. Oftentimes, planning efforts will consider broad adaptation options, gather feedback, identify preferred approaches, conduct feasibility studies, and so on, narrowing in over time on more specific projects to be implemented. Ensuring consistency with SB 272 while allowing for this type of phased approach is something we intend to work with local governments on. Next slide. The fourth component is identification of lead planning and implementation agencies. While sea level rise planning processes may be initiated or led by a variety of local government departments or individuals, LCPs are developed by local government planning departments, and planning department staff should be an integral part of any planning team. LCP policies related to specific adaptation projects, other next steps, or which address city or county-owned assets should identify the lead agency, asset manager, or other entity responsible for carrying out adaptation approaches and identified projects. This type of information could also be included in an adaptation plan. Next slide. SB 272 also requires the completion of an economic analysis for, at a minimum, critical public infrastructure, which is defined in the language of SB 272. At a minimum, local jurisdictions should assess the costs associated with damage to such assets from the coastal hazards and sea level rise scenarios included in the vulnerability assessment, as well as any costs associated with adaptation options or specifically identified adaptation projects for such assets. This type of information could be incorporated into the vulnerability assessment, adaptation plan, or as a standalone document. Next slide. The last SB 272 component that must be included is a timeline for updates as needed based on sea level rise projections, local conditions, identified adaptation strategies and projects, and other locally relevant factors. LCP policies must identify explicit timelines for updates to completed vulnerability assessments, adaptation plans, or other relevant materials, and LCP provisions as necessary to reflect changing conditions, updated science, and evolving best practices. Continued consistency with SB 272 will require local governments to meet the identified deadlines. Next slide. As I mentioned previously, the mechanism by which the Coastal Commission will determine consistency with SB 272 is review and certification of the LCP. Thus, to be consistent with SB 272, by January 1st, 2034, jurisdictions are required to complete each of the 6 components I just discussed and obtain certification of a new or updated LCP that reflects this information. LCP policies and zonings must require the use of best available science, require risk disclosures and assumptions of risk, reflect and address identified vulnerabilities in an equitable manner, allow for or require the implementation of identified adaptation approaches for specific areas and development types, lay the foundation for implementation of identified adaptation projects, recognizing that CDPs for such projects will include more detail, identify lead agencies or departments responsible for implementing identified projects, identify next steps such as highlighting topics or strategies for which additional analysis is needed, and identify a timeline for updates to the vulnerability assessment, adaptation plan, economic analysis, or other relevant studies, as well as for subsequent updates to the LCP or specific LCP policies. Next slide. Importantly, a number of jurisdictions are in the midst of LCP updates or have initiated, or in some cases completed, planning exercises that include some, but not all, of the 6 SB 272 components. Rather than stalling planning efforts, adding new tasks to existing efforts, or otherwise waiting for the completion of all 6 components, the Commission encourages jurisdictions to complete phased LCP updates that reflect the work that has already been completed. Examples of LCP policies that could be included in a phased LCP update include baseline sea level rise policies, similar to those recommended by the Coastal Commission Local Government Working Group, including requirements to use best available science and to incorporate risk disclosures and assumptions of risk, along with policies like those I just described that reflect the information that has already been developed. LCP policies should also include explicit timelines for completion of the components that have not yet been completed, or topics which will be the subject of continued more detailed planning. Such timelines should account for the completion of these components and the subsequent LCP certification that reflects the more detailed information by January 1st, 2034 to ensure consistency with SB 272. Next slide. Last but not least, I want to touch very briefly on the EJ updates included in this public review draft. The team working on this piece will be doing a more detailed briefing at the September hearing, but for those who are jumping into their review of the updates now, I want to note that this is the culmination of a broader project also funded by NOAA to better integrate EJ considerations into our sea level rise work. Other components of the project included a literature review, onboarding a team of EJ advisors, development of an engagement plan, and the informational guidance that has been incorporated in this update. In brief, EJ concepts have been added or expanded throughout the sea level rise policy guidance. This includes a new guiding principle, new discussion of the importance of meaningful engagement, some additional information on how sea level rise disproportionately impacts EJ communities, and new steps in the LCP and CDP chapters related to identifying and engaging with EJ communities in planning and permitting contexts. Next slide. In closing, I will reiterate that the draft is available as Exhibit 1 and on the Commission's website shown here. We will be accepting comments through September 23rd and anticipate bringing a revised draft for adoption later this year. This ends today's briefing, and we are available for questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ducklow. That was just such a great summary and a great report. So I'd like to open this now for public comment and ask how many speakers we have.
I guess we had 3 speakers.
All right, so are they on Zoom?
All 3 are in the room.
In the room, fantastic. So please come forward.
Paul Crisanti, followed by Dane Lazarus, and then Don Schmitz.
All right, each speaker will have 2 minutes, but let me know if you need more.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. I am Paul Grisanti, immediate past president of the nonprofit organization Smart Coast California, and I'm here today representing the organization. Smart Coast California is dedicated to community sustainability, property rights, and the environment. We believe these things are not mutually exclusive. Smart Coast California is a staunch advocate for a variety of solutions to address sea level rise. We believe in neighborhood and community solutions and do not believe in a one-size-fits-all response. We have been pleased to participate on the neighborhood scale work group and the various solutions it proposes. Through collaboration with you and all stakeholders, we hope to find the right balance for our shoreline, supporting those who live, work, and enjoy our coast. As Californians, we are all in this together. We need to work together to find solutions as partners for all of California, those who live on the coast and those who recreate there, neighborhood by neighborhood. Smart Coast California hopes to continue engaging with your staff and with you to work together on these critical solutions. Most importantly, we truly wish to express our appreciation for the work you're doing on these issues of sea level rise. We look forward to our mutual endeavors and the positive impact we can make together. Thank you.
Thank you. Dane Lazarus.
Dane Lazarus with USC Sea Grant. A core aspect of Sea Grant's mission.
So you'll have to speak just right into the mic for us to hear you. Thank you.
Is that better? Hi, Dane Lazarus from USC Sea Grant. Good morning. A core aspect of Sea Grant's mission is fostering public understanding of coastal science and policy to enable informed and equitable decision-making. Sea Grant would like to express our support for the Coastal Commission's commitment to updating these sea level rise policy guidance documents. As part of our Dept LA program, we recently completed the 4th iteration of a statewide longitudinal survey of coastal practitioners to understand the current state of progress and what the most pressing needs are. Some of the most relevant results from that survey include the following. Shoreline hazards management, such as sea level rise, erosion, flooding, and sediment management, is the #1 reported coastal management challenge. Perception of its severity has increased over the course of this survey since 2011 and is anticipated to continue increasing into the future. The legal frameworks surrounding these issues are generally seen as unclear and ambiguous. The majority of respondents have not yet aligned, integrated, or leveraged an adaptation plan with other local plans, including LCPs. And there is widespread agreement that more and better community engagement is vital to adaptation planning, particularly among historically marginalized populations. So this document from the Coastal Commission helps provide clear, cohesive guidance, which is vital to these coastal managers and planners as part of that survey. And finally, we would like to support or unequivocally support the statement that marginalized communities and peoples have historically faced disproportionate impact from climate change and that this must be addressed in coastal adaptation planning statewide. Thank you.
Thank you. And Don Schmitz.
Good morning, Commissioners. Don Schmitz. I am the lead coastal consultant for Smart Coast California. I want to start off by giving a very brief perspective in regards to this program, that this commission has been the leading driving force to deal with sea level rise, and it is an exceedingly complicated issue that we are dealing with. Candidly, 3-4 years ago, the program was in very dire trouble. Local communities felt that they were at odds and adversarial with the Coastal Commission. They were withdrawing their local coastal program amendments. And I cannot say enough positively about your staff and you in fixing that perception and moving this program forward, starting with Executive Director Jack Ainsworth and now with Kate Hucklebridge. Kelsey has been amazing to work with, as has been Madeline. Special shout out to Commissioner Wilson and Megan Harmon in regards to their work with the working group. Also, Commissioner Wilson attended the Smart Coast California summits on sea level rise and has attended our virtual presentations. I was challenged, Don, if there's a better way of doing it than just having managed retreat, then trot it out. And so we have been pulling together the very best coastal engineers, city council members and supervisors from all over the state and nonprofit organizations to do just that. And it's palatable. The change is really happening. We still have a lot of work to do in front of us, clearly. But that being said, we're moving in the right direction, and we are excited to bring forward to this commission the concept of neighborhood by neighborhood planning so that we can have a more nuanced, nimble, and effective response to sea level rise. And thank you to you and your staff.
Thank you.
Is that the final speaker, Chris?
Yes, no more speakers.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me bring it back. Ms. Ducklow, do you have any other further comments? Great, thanks so much. Commissioners, are there any comments on this? All right, we'll begin with Vice Chair Escalante.
I just wanted to thank you for those comments. I totally agree. When I first started, my first local government joint meeting was all about managed retreat and all these disagreements. So you 100%, all this education and conversation. Sometimes it's hard to come to the table when you feel like you are on opposing sides of things, but I think we all want to be able to live and enjoy this environment and the state and thrive, be safe, and enjoy ourselves and our families. So I am grateful for this moment. But I wanted to just express my gratitude to former Commissioner Sarah Manzada, of course, now with Natural Resources. It's stellar that every time we talk about sea level rise and our planning, we think of her and her leadership on this, and we're incredibly grateful. So please tell our former Commissioner Avanzada that we're thinking of her today. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilson?
Yeah, I want to, it's been a long road. It's still a long road. We're not done yet. I don't know if we'll ever be done because of basically the migrating science and the responses, and really sort of the iterative understanding as every community goes through these processes. But I really believe the work that's been done so far will do a lot to inform communities as they move forward in their LCP updates. This is just really, it's just going to be much more informed. I just want to thank the staff, and I want to thank the committee members themselves from the local government for being there. It has sort of a bit of a rotation because, well, it's been longstanding, and it turns out that electeds don't stay in their positions forever. And so, but everyone's been truly committed, and I just want one shout out to one former member, Carmen Ramirez, who passed away just before our last meeting here. She really was one of the founders of being able to speak to so many different voices and so many different spaces, and so I just think her memory lives on in these conversations. So, anyways, I want to thank everybody for their efforts in this. It's ongoing. There's been progress, a lot of good progress, and there's still more to do.
Thank you. Commissioner Natoff, did you?
Yeah. Thank you. It's great to see state agencies getting things coordinated across things. So, the more we can speak with one voice, the better. So I wanted to compliment staff and agency for doing that. And then just one thought about, this is such great, rich material to make sure that we get it out to educate as many people as possible, so that when we do get applications, they take into account this so that we don't have to do so much conditioning of proposals. So, for example, like, are we regularly communicating with architects at AIA chapters along the coast and others who are the ones who are actually helping design many of the proposals that we get in front of us. So just some thoughts about making sure we get this out as far and wide as we can. Thank you.
Commissioner Cummings?
First, just want to start by thanking staff for all their work on this. It's really going to help local communities advance their policies on sea level rise and how we can address sea level rise as we're thinking about development in the coastal zone and what that means under a changing climate. I did have a question related to any recommendations for jurisdictions that are in the middle of, conducting sea level rise vulnerability assessments. I know Santa Cruz County received a grant from the Coastal Commission last year, and we have a consultant group that's currently conducting the sea level rise vulnerability assessment for our county. And as these documents come out, when a jurisdiction's kind of in the middle of that process, it's like, I think sometimes there's a sense of fear that it's going to take them off course and maybe force them to change course. And so I'm just wondering how we can best incorporate, these new documents into what is an already ongoing kind of study and assessment of what folks are doing in their jurisdictions.
Sure, thank you for that question, Commissioner Cummings, and I'll turn it over to Kelsey in a second, but just on a broad scale, this update continues a lot of the work that we have been doing over the years. We have been thinking, and once SB 272 is passed, we've been thinking about how to incorporate that along the existing direction we've been taking for many years. So we don't expect there to be some huge change in direction for most local governments working through their process, especially those that have grants through the Coastal Commission, because they have been working with Kelsey and our team already. We have been already baking all of that in our work with local communities. So I think those, again, the local governments that do have grants have the advantage of working directly with our staff to try to make sure we are consistent with both SB 272 and with this sea level rise guidance. Kelsey, did you have anything specific you wanted to add to that? I know you are working on these things every single day.
No, nothing really to add. In terms of the science, because the numbers have gone down, I think there's not many changes that need to be made to any of those kinds of documents immediately. We can still kind of get a sense of what are the range of impacts from those different amounts. And certainly with the SB 272 requirements, we want to work individually with local governments to figure out what are the exact needs and support all of this ongoing work and do those kind of phased approaches to LCP updates to support all of that.
If I might add one more thing, I do think it underscores all this discussion and the work we are doing under our existing grant program has been really successful in trying to craft vulnerability analyses and adaptation plans that can be consistent with the Coastal Act and can come in front of this commission with a good chance of success. We've been working really hard towards that goal. I think with the passage of SB 272, it underscores the need for additional funding for local governments to continue that work. Our grant program, I think, has been really successful. We have appreciated the opportunity to work really closely and really dig into the tough issues. And thanks to our local government working group, we've been working through those issues kind of on a statewide scale and then specifically with local governments. So we still have some funding available that we will be pushing out as soon as we can to local governments, but I think this is a long-term need. And something that we will want to think about in the future. How can we find additional funding sources for local governments to get this work funded and done as quickly as possible so that they are in compliance with SB 272?
That's really helpful, thank you. And then one last question is there an opportunity for local jurisdictions to kind of combine forces and conduct these studies together? Because I know Santa Cruz County, we've got the city of Santa Cruz, the county, and the city of Capitola who really make up the coastal communities, and smaller jurisdictions obviously have less access to funding, and so I'm just wondering if there are opportunities for jurisdictions to apply for funds or to conduct these studies regionally rather than independently.
Yes, I think there is an opportunity to do that, and I think that makes absolute sense in many cases, especially depending on what the specifics of a study. There are regional studies that make sense in terms of, let's say, sand movement, in Southern California as one example, or in Central Coast, different. But so I think, yes, we would encourage those types of applications. There is also, of course, a need to get more specific with local government by local government when you get to adaptation planning. But honestly, we need to be looking at this at all scales. We'll be having a workshop next month on the neighborhood scale, so that's sort of the finer scale. But But so many of the issues and the things that drive sea level rise hazards and just the general impacts that we're seeing on the coastline are regional in nature. And so it is critical we're looking at all those different scales. So yes, we encourage those types of applications as appropriate, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Turnbull Sanders.
Thank you, Chair. I want to really thank the staff for all of the work that was done to put this together, and very much appreciated the color coding. The lawyer and me really appreciated that level of detail. Also wanted to thank Dane Lazarus, coming from USC, for his feedback, and I guess a question to the staff about whether or not some of the resources and the feedback that USC Sea Grant has in the report that Dane outlined, is that being used by the staff, or are you in communication?
So I'll give a high-level response because I was really interested to hear about the longitudinal study that you were discussing. I was going to ask you for a copy of that later. I'm not sure if others on staff have seen that, but also in response to Commissioner Nodoff's comments about getting the word out, I found that those results really interesting. I kind of took some notes on it, and it captures very much what we're trying to do in this guidance. And so I think it's very aligned, but I liked the idea of getting, educating practitioners about this guidance, about how to use the guidance, about what, what resources are available and how we can be a resource as they are, folks are getting hired to do these kinds of studies for local governments. So I haven't read the results. This is the first I've heard of it. I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to say here. It sounds like not really, but something I want to dig into a little more and make sure we're taking advantage of all that work that US Sea Grant has done to reach out to the folks that will be doing the actual work, make sure we're connecting.
Thank you. And Dane, I've had a chance to work with Phyllis in the past in my capacity at USC, so thank you for being here. The other question I had, I think the USC Sea Grant identified specific experts to potentially refer to. The draft report that was in our package today, I think on the first few pages, says that there were, I think, 8 advisors that were consulted. Just perhaps when we have the broader discussion on EJ next month, just identifying who those advisors are would be helpful, and also seeing whether or not there is a specific tribal advisor that we're consulting with, or several. In addition, in defining EJ communities, I think a lot of that's pulled from the environmental justice policy, but one thing that struck me in reading the definition around discriminatory land use policies and folks who are subjected to those is that I do think we need to have a bit broader description on what EJ communities are. So it's not just the discriminatory land use practices, but it's a whole social scheme that stems from both the dispossession of indigenous people of their lands, and also chattel slavery, which continued on through Jim Crow laws. And then you have de facto practices that have been imposed that not only show up in land use practices, but also show up in harassment and discrimination and general feeling of unwelcomeness. And so I think just exploring that a little bit more will be helpful. The other thing that I learned a little bit more about on being on the 30 by 30 Commission was that there is a distinction, although interrelated, between issues related to tribal concerns versus environmental justice. Those were specifically separated in the draft report, but I think there are also some specific definitions around the dispossession of land and those kinds of challenges specific to Indigenous First Nation peoples that could be examined a little bit more and defined a little bit more. to really give those life, and also to give guidance to our local jurisdictions in those areas. And let's see, hang on one second, I took a couple of notes. The other piece that may be helpful is looking at metrics for defining what we mean by meaningful participation in the process. So when we're talking about meaningful engagement in the sea level rise documents, what does that mean? Are there some sample processes? Thinking about our environmental justice policy, where we had, I think, over 100 meetings with different groups up and down the state, as an example, but really laying out what does that look like. Because sometimes when those words are used, they can be treated as just lip service, and you could have a minimal compliance with that, or you could have a more robust compliance with that general guidance. So just some things to consider when it's brought back to us next month in the environmental justice sections.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Eckerly.
Thank you, Chair. I also just wanted to extend my thanks to staff for their ongoing work and their partnership with the Ocean Protection Council on all things sea level rise. We are really pleased with the ongoing work, and obviously the guidance update was very important, but this commission guidance is really where the implementation of that higher level statewide guidance gets done. So it's really important. Thank you so much. I wanted to also just address Commissioner Cummings' point in a little further. As it relates to the state guidance, we have a box, it's box 13 on, I took my glasses off so I can't read the page number, page 55 of the state guidance that expresses clarity around how to address existing and ongoing efforts. And I know that the Coastal Commission's guidance will as well, but if you want to look at the language there. And then finally, a couple pieces on funding. As you know, the Ocean Protection Council has a grant program through Senate Bill 1. The purpose of that funding is to support local, regional, and tribal governments in developing sea level rise adaptation plans and projects. We are working very closely with Commission staff on that program to make sure it's complementary of the grant program for the LCPs. And we will continue to do that. One of the things that we're starting to learn through that program, it's brand new, we're iterating, we're lots of lessons learned, is this piece about the importance of regional planning. So we're getting a range of different projects. We're trying to prioritize some regional investments, but I think it's really, really important for many reasons, and that's something we want to continue to think about as we evolve our Senate Bill 1 program. So looking forward to having more conversations about that, but that is a priority for us.
Thank you. Commissioner Aguirre.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to express my support, and thank you for asking that question. That was a really great question. I think that, you know, as we develop the guidance, the nuances of not being a one-size-fits-all and looking at the specifics of each jurisdiction, but when it comes to grant application, I think this could be a real incentive for jurisdictions to apply together and think about things regionally, and it's great to hear that OPC is also looking at it through that lens. So just thank you for that question, Commissioner.
All right, thanks so much, everyone. I want to again express my appreciation to staff for the huge amount of work that got us to this point. I'm very much looking forward to the hearing next month on the environmental justice aspects of sea level rise. And I just also wanted to express my appreciation to Senator Laird for SB 272. That legislation is what's really jump-started this, in my opinion, and will continue. It jump-started more than it already has been. But to have that kind of legislation that incentivizes in such a significant way, and it, you know, and really requires local governments to move forward with their sea level rise planning, that's absolutely essential. And I hope that we'll see more legislation where the legislature is working with the commission to deal with many of the threats that we're going to be dealing with as a result of sea level rise on the coast. So I want to, again, express my gratitude to Senator Laird. All right, we're going to move forward now with the consent calendar. I also want to let everyone know we're probably not going to be taking breaks this morning, so if you need to step away, just do so, just given the time constraints we're facing. So with regard to the consent calendar, we have 2 items, and would that be you, Mr. Hudson?
Yeah, yes, it is. Thank you. And that does bring us to item 6, the consent calendar for today, which includes 1 North Coast District item for highway maintenance along Highway 101 in Del Norte County, and 1 South Coast District item for minor modifications to a residential development in Pacific Palisades. There is no known opposition to these matters, and the applicants are in agreement with the staff recommendations. Therefore, we're recommending that the commission vote and approve the consent calendar.
Thanks, Mr. Hudson. Any ex partes? Any public speakers?
And just confirming, this is items 6A and 6B?
Correct.
Just available for questions.
Okay, thank you. Bringing it back to the commission, asking whether anyone would like to remove an item.
I move consent.
All right, we have a motion, and we'll say motion by Wilson, second by Bochco. We'll need a roll call vote with Commissioner Harmon online.
Commissioner Aguirre.
Yes.
Aguirre, yes. Commissioner Bochco. Commissioner Bochco.
In here. Yes.
Bochco, yes. Commissioner Cummings.
Aye.
Cummings, yes. Commissioner Escalante.
Yes.
Escalante, yes. Commissioner Harmon.
Yes.
Harmon, yes. Commissioner Lowenberg. Lowenberg, yes. Commissioner Nadoff.
Aye.
Nadoff, yes. Commissioner Turnbull Sanders.
Yes.
Turnbull Sanders, yes. Commissioner Uranga.
Aye.
Uranga, yes. Commissioner Wilson.
Yep.
Wilson, yes. Chair Hart.
Yes.
Hart, yes. The vote is unanimous.
All right, thank you. We'll now turn to consent items that are removed from the regular calendar. Mr. Hudson.
Thank you. And that's item 7, which are the applications to be moved from regular to the consent calendar for all the districts on the agenda today. As mentioned during the agenda changes earlier this morning, there are 3 items that we're recommending be moved to consent, and those are first, item 12A, the state parks application for native plant restoration in Topanga State Park. Item 14A, the time extension for the City of Rancho Palos Verdes LCP amendment regarding land use changes. And item 15A, the Ismail CDP application for redevelopment of a residential site in Playa del Rey. I would just note that I was contacted by Don Schmitz yesterday, who was requesting that the 1-year time extension for the LCP amendment by the City of Rancho Palos Verdes only be approved for a shorter period of time. Mr. Schmitz noted that he represents a private property owner whose property is the subject of the amendment. He does not represent the city, who is in agreement with the time extension today, and the city has indicated they would like additional time to coordinate with our staff. I would also note that the Coastal Act provides for the Commission to extend its time limit for an LCP amendment for up to 1 year. Staff intends to bring this amendment back for Commission action in the near future. However, such a schedule is dependent upon several different factors. And although staff believes this will be brought back in the near term, we're recommending the Commission extend the deadline for the full year as provided by the Coastal Act to allow for uncertainty in the review process and necessary flexibility for our coordination with the city. Now, in regard to the other items being moved to consent today, the applicants are in agreement with the staff recommendations on these matters. Staff is not aware of any opposition, and we're recommending those items be moved to consent. Thus, we're recommending the Commission vote and approve this item. Staff is available for questions.
Thanks, Mr. Hudson. Any ex partes? Any public speakers?
We have 2 speakers signed up for item 14A.
All right.
Don Schmitz and then Scott Piotr.
Mr. Schmitz. Be 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Don Schmitz on behalf of the property owner, and appreciate Deputy Director Hudson's comments. I did reach out to him. I'm aware of the complexities that are involved with these matters. And I would not patronize this commission to try and elevate how important housing is and the dearth of housing that we have in our state. I have listened to you speak to this many a times, and I know it's a matter that you take very seriously, and I do know that your staff takes it very seriously as well. As a little bit of background, the city is not in compliance with the HCD standards. They've been working hard for the last 3 years to bring this upzoning forward, to address that in their consultation with the state. I also recognize that you want to have the flexibility of the full year being extended out. And Steve has told me that he's going to do everything possible to move this along and bring it back. And in the 25 years I've been working with Steve, his word is always good to me. That being said, this is something that is extremely timely. And I do know that a word from the Commission in regards to your disposition on this being a priority is important for your staff to hear. It would be fantastic if this could be brought back before the Commission no later than the December hearing. You're blacked out in January, and it would be disappointing if this languished well into the next year. So I know that your staff will be very much on top of it, but I know they do have to make a lot of executive decisions in regards to prioritizing their work. And so I simply wanted to elevate it to the Commission in the hopes that you could let your sentiments be known in regards to just how important you consider this application to be. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Scott Piotr.
Madam Chair, Coastal Commission, my name is Scott Piotr. I'm an architect, and I'm the project manager on the property for the private property owner. I'm also a former councilman of another coastal city, so I've dealt with Coastal Commission a lot in my career. It has been a 3-year process with the city as they've gone through the RENA numbers and going back and forth with HCD, and we've been waiting patiently, obviously at no cost or no fault of the commission or its staff. But they have been diligently pursuing it, and we are anxious to work ahead with staff to conclude this. And this is the only property of all the properties that were rezoned for the HCD requirements that happens to fall in a coastal land use plan. So as Don said, we would appreciate any kind of expeditious handling that the commission can give us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just note that we have another person for item 12A who's here in person available for questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hudson?
Okay, no additional comments. Just note we are available for questions.
Okay, thank you. Any comments by the commission? Vice Chair?
Just real quick to answer some of the public comments. When do you expect this to come back?
We don't have a specific month, but we do. I don't think that this is a particularly complex amendment, but the city has asked for some additional time, and so our coordination process is continuing. But as I did commit to Mr. Smits, we will bring this back as soon as possible. I think, if not the beginning of next year, I think is certainly a likelihood.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, and I appreciate Mr. Smith's indicating that he knows of the importance of housing, and particularly multi-unit housing that's hopefully affordable to this commission, and I appreciate your comment and appreciate the work of staff in expediting this, and just note that it is the request of the city, not delays requested by the commission, that are putting this item off, at least for a few months. That's my understanding. Okay, thank you very much. All right, do any members of the commission wish to remove any of these items? If not, entertain a motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We need a roll call vote, please, on the consent calendar removed.
Commissioner Bochco.
Yes.
Bochco, yes. Commissioner Cummings.
Aye.
Cummings, yes. Commissioner Escalante.
Yes.
Escalante, yes. Commissioner Harmon.
Yes.
Harmon, yes. Commissioner Lowenberg.
Yes.
Lowenberg, yes. Commissioner Nuttall.
Aye.
Nuttall, yes. Commissioner Turnbull Sanders.
Yes.
Turnbull Sanders, yes. Commissioner Uranga.
Aye.
Uranga, yes. Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Wilson, yes. Commissioner Aguirre?
Yes.
Aguirre, yes. Chair Hart?
Yes, thank you very much.
Vote is unanimous.
Sorry, Vanessa, I cut you off there. All right, we're now moving to item 8, the Deputy Director's report for the North Coast.
All right, and thank you. Deputy Director Gray is available online on Zoom, but she's having some internet connections and is only able to participate via phone. So I'm going to provide the Deputy Director's report on her behalf. The North Coast District Deputy Director's report this month includes 2 waivers and 1 immaterial amendment. Staff is not aware of any opposition on these matters, and we are asking whether 3 or more commissioners object to this item. And again, just noting that Deputy Director Gray is available to answer any questions via Zoom today.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Do we have any speakers?
Just one available for questions.
All right. Do 3 or more commissioners object to an item on the District Director's report? Seeing no objection, the commission concurs. And we'll move on to the next item, which is the Deputy Director's report for South Central Coast.
All right, thank you. And that does bring us to item 9, the Deputy Director's report for the South Central Coast District, which includes 1 waiver and 2 immaterial permit amendments. We're not aware of any opposition to these items, and we're asking whether 3 or more commissioners object to any of the items in the Deputy Director's report. I am available for questions.
Thank you. Any speakers?
Just 2 available for questions.
All right. Do 3 or more commissioners object to adoption of the DDR? All right. Seeing no objection, the commission concurs. And we will move on to the next item, which is 10A.
Thank you. And item 10A will be presented by Tyler Liddell, a coastal program analyst in our South Central Coast District. I would also just like to note this will be Tyler's first presentation before the commission.
Good morning, Commissioners. Item 10A is an amendment to the LUP and LIP portions of the Certified County of Los Angeles Santa Monica Mountains Local Coastal Program. The subject amendment proposes to update the county's habitat impact in lieu fee that is used to ensure that all unavoidable impacts from approved development to environmentally sensitive habitat areas are fully mitigated, and to make related clarifying text changes. I'm sure all of you here in person today have noticed that the Santa Monica Mountains are a region of singular, rugged beauty. Amongst the range's rocky slopes live several rare and ecologically important species, each dependent on the ongoing work of preserving their respective habitats. Next slide, please. LA County's certified LCP for the area divides these habitats into 3 categories: H1, H2, and H3. H1 and H2 habitats are collectively described as sensitive environmental resource areas, which meet the definition of ESHA under the Coastal Act. As can be seen on this slide, H1 and H2 habitats represent a large portion of the county's Santa Monica Mountains coastal zone. Next slide, please. The certified LCP generally prohibits new development in sensitive habitat unless such development is unavoidable and either a resource-dependent use or necessary to avoid a legal taking of private land. In such cases, where impacts to sensitive habitats are unavoidable, the Commission first implemented the Habitat Impact Mitigation Fee in the Santa Monica Mountains back in 2002. At that time, the per-acre amount was based solely on the cost of installing replacement plantings on a disturbed site and adjusted annually for inflation. It did not take into account the cost of the land itself. When, in 2014, the Commission certified the LCP, it found that the in lieu fee warranted reevaluation to reflect the true cost of habitat acquisition for compensatory mitigation, and it allowed the county to use the previously calculated fee of $15,500 per acre for a limited 5-year period to allow the county time to conduct a fee study and to propose an LCP amendment to update the fee. Next slide, please. The study that the county commissioned is a comprehensive look at the expected cost of preserving 1 acre of habitat for every acre impacted. They conducted several meetings with conservation and resource management agencies, as well as commission staff, to discuss and refine study assumptions, collect data, and receive input on current costs associated with the acquisition and long-term management of property containing habitat in this area. The study breaks this cost down into its principal components, shown on the slide, including land, management, transaction, and administration costs. When added together, these components amount to an estimated cost of $83,478 per acre, which is a more than 500% increase in the previous amount of $15,500 per acre. Next slide, please. Consistent with the results of the study, the county is proposing to increase the in lieu fee amount to $83,478 per acre for direct impacts as a result of the approved development area and associated fuel modification and required off-site brush clearance. Impacts from non-irrigated fuel modification zones for approved development will be $20,870, 1/4 of the regular fee since vegetation is only selectively thinned. Both fees are proposed to be adjusted for inflation every March, beginning in 2025, using the Consumer Price Index. Commission staff has reviewed the county's methodology to establish the new substantially higher fee amount and concurs with the county that the new fee is appropriate to provide adequate mitigation of unavoidable impacts to sensitive habitat. These updated amounts are based on a thorough analysis of the real costs associated with habitat preservation. This has the dual advantage of incentivizing less impactful design alternatives in the applicant's decision-making process and funding the county's ongoing work of preserving coastal resources. In conclusion, staff is recommending that the Commission approve the LCP amendment as submitted by the County of Los Angeles. Because this amendment includes changes to both the land use plan and implementation plan components of the certified LCP, there are two separate motions to accomplish this recommendation, which can be found on pages 5 and 6 of the staff report. This concludes the staff presentation, and we are available for questions.
Well, that was a fantastic first report, so clear, just streamlined. Can't wait for your next one.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. All right, are there any ex partes on this item? All right, let's open the public hearing, ask if there are speakers on this item.
We just have Cameron Robertson, the senior planner from the Los Angeles County Department of Regional Planning, online to answer any questions. There are no other speakers.
All right, great. So bring this back to the commission for any questions, comments, or motion. Commissioner Bochco.
Yes. I move that the commission certify the County of Los Angeles Santa Monica Mountains Land Use Plan Amendment Number LCP4 MMT 2400221 as submitted and asking for a yes vote.
Second.
Was that Commissioner Cummings? Motion by Bochco, second by Cummings. Any other comments? All right. I just have a brief comment just to say that having spent the last few days here in the Santa Monica Mountains, and I spent last evening walking in Malibu Creek State Park, it's just such a remarkable, precious, critically important area. I'm so supportive. The goal here, of course, is to avoid the imposition of in lieu fees by avoiding the conversion of habitat. So I think that hopefully this will help to accomplish that, but if not, it'll allow for mitigation. So thank you so much to everyone involved in making this happen. And we'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Cummings?
Aye.
Cummings, yes. Commissioner Escalante?
Sorry, yes.
Escalante, yes. Commissioner Harmon?
Yes.
Harmon, yes. Commissioner Lowenberg? Lowenberg, yes. Commissioner Noddoff?
Aye.
Noddoff, yes. Commissioner Turnbull Sanders?
Yes.
Turnbull Sanders, yes. Commissioner Uranga?
Aye.
Uranga, yes. Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Wilson, yes. Commissioner Aguirre?
Yes.
Aguirre, yes. Commissioner Bochco?
Yes.
Bochco, yes. Chair Hart?
Yes.
Hart, yes. The vote is unanimous.
All right.
I move that the commission reject the County of Los Angeles Santa Monica Mountains Implementation Plan Amendment Number LCP4 MMT 2400221 as submitted and asking for a no vote.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, a second. I'll ask for roll call, please.
Commissioner Escalante?
No.
Escalante, no. Commissioner Harmon?
No.
Harmon, no. Commissioner Lowenberg? No. Lowenberg, no. Commissioner Natoff?
No.
Natoff, no. Commissioner Turnbull Sanders?
No.
Turnbull Sanders, no. Commissioner Uranga?
Nay.
Uranga, no. Commissioner Wilson?
Nope.
Wilson, no. Commissioner Aguirre?
No.
Aguirre, no. Commissioner Bochco?
No.
Bochco, no. Commissioner Cummings?
No.
Cummings, no. Chair Hart?
No.
Hart, no. The vote is unanimous.
All right, thank you very much. Commissioners, that completes that item, and we'll move on now to item 10.5A, University of California, Santa Barbara Long Range Development Plan Amendment.
Thank you. And item 10.5A will be presented by Michelle Cabran, a Senior Coastal Program Analyst in our South Central Coast District. If we could pull the PowerPoint up, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Item 10.5A is an amendment request by the University of California, Santa Barbara to modify its Certified Long-Range Development Plan, or LRDP, to incorporate new sea level rise adaptation strategy provisions to the LRDP in order to require the university to perform specific actions to address sea level rise and associated coastal hazard impacts. We should mention that the university was required to develop the sea level rise adaptation strategy by the Commission as part of its approval of the university's most recent comprehensive update of its LRDP. Next slide, please. The amendment lays out an adaptation framework to address coastal hazard impacts in 5 planning areas. This adaptation framework would require monitoring of environmental change on campus, future assessments and studies to identify appropriate adaptation pathways and triggers for action, and adaptation plans to remove and relocate vulnerable development. Next slide, please. A specific example of this adaptation pathway approach, as laid out in the proposed strategy, is in Area 4 on the university's main campus, where an existing road and public access amenities, such as a coastal access parking lot, as shown here on this slide, are already quite close to a bluff edge and may become vulnerable to erosion with only a ½ meter of sea level rise. The proposed amendment would require the university, within 5 years of certification of this amendment, to create a plan for retreat of development along the road and would only allow shoreline protection of existing development where absolutely necessary to avoid a public danger and where temporary closure or immediate realignment of the road, including lane narrowing, are not feasible. As this example demonstrates, the amendment includes a hierarchy of adaptation actions that generally focus on solutions involving removal and landward relocation of development, as well as minimizing the use of hard protective structures, and only allows such protective devices on an interim basis while adaptation actions are being implemented. This approach is consistent with Commission guidance and with the Coastal Act requirements to minimize risk to life and property, maximize public access to and along the shoreline, and protect environmentally sensitive habitat areas, wetlands, and marine resources. There are 2 addendums for this item to include a couple minor changes to the staff report and to respond to a letter of public correspondence regarding the seawater intake at Campus Point. With that, Commission staff believes the LRDP amendment as submitted is consistent with the Chapter 3 policies of the Coastal Act. Therefore, we recommend approval of the proposed amendment as submitted. The motion to accomplish this can be found on page 5 of the staff report, and this concludes staff's presentation, and we're available for questions.
Great, thank you so much. Any ex partes? All right, public speakers on this?
Charles Lester.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you. Charles Lester on behalf of the university, and I'm happy to be here this morning. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, you'll have a half hour.
Faces.
No, just kidding.
No, I know you're on Friday morning, get out of town, so I'll try to be brief. It's been my pleasure to work on this plan for the university, and I want to thank the Chancellor Yang, Vice Chancellor Chuck Haynes for their support of the project and the plan, and especially Sherry Hammond, who's here today with me from Campus Planning and Design. She's been great to support the work and make sure we got a plan finally to you for certification. I did want to take a couple minutes to talk about some of the larger practical themes that I think are presented by the plan and that we all ought to keep thinking about in the spirit of the updated guidance today. And I wanted to do that in the context of adaptation pathways. If you could go to the next slide, please. And I won't talk about this. You heard about a pathway example. Next slide. So everybody is talking about adaptation pathways as the way to get through this sea level rise adaptation challenge. And these are a couple examples from City of Santa Cruz, City of Coronado, talking about pathways as the way to do adaptation planning. But I wanted to highlight a couple aspects of that. Visioning, dealing with scientific uncertainty, and actionable plans. If you could go to the next slide. So the IPCC has talked about pathways in their latest guidance, and this is a figure from their work a couple years ago. And basically it's talking about we can be on a couple different major pathways. We can be on a pathway towards increasing resilience going into the future, and you see the branches in there. The details aren't as important as understanding there's this progression of action moving towards a more resilient society. Or we can get on a pathway that heads us down in a maladaptive way, depending on the actions we take and how further down that pathway towards not being resilient we are. And so there's this idea that we're heading towards resilience through pathways. If you can go to the next slide. We are fortunate that in this case, the university has embraced a vision, and this is the first point that I wanted to make, which is I think when we talk about pathways, there's a risk that we think this is somehow about punting to the future some decision that has to be made about what to do based on monitoring conditions over time, and triggered actions. But the risk is that we don't figure out what we want the coast to be, the vision for the coast that we're heading for through these pathways. And so it's really important that whatever decisions at these little forks in the road that we encounter be informed by your vision. So the plan and all of the strategies, one of that you heard about, is rooted in this vision that the university has fortunately embraced, which is aspiring to maximize resilience, protect and restore natural shorelines through proactive phased managed adaptation. Not necessarily a complete retreat plan, but basically recognizing that they want to preserve all these incredible shoreline resources and figure out what the actions are necessary in order to make sure that happens as conditions change. All right, so the critical step, and I think we've gotten into a place at times when we've ignored this because we focused on vulnerability assessment so much as the first thing, as a technical exercise, right? So we make this about understanding what the projections are, what's at risk, but we forget to ask, what do we want the coast to be? And I think the larger message for us and for the staff is to think about that vision and to participate in a shared vision, right? This is not just about the neighborhood or community vision. This is about visions that bring statewide concerns together with local adaptation concerns. So investing in that visioning is important. The other point I think that is important to make about the visioning is simply that it's a shared exercise in figuring out what the values are and how they come together in particular places. Next slide. So scientific uncertainty. You've updated your guidance today or started the discussion about it. And this has been a point of lots of debate over the last 10 years, exactly which projections to use, how should those be incorporated into a plan. These are the curves from the latest guidance for Santa Barbara, for example. And there's, depending on your assumptions, there's different ways it could go. Next slide. This is, Kelsey didn't show this, but I'm sure it's in your report somewhere. This is the core of that OPC updated guidance, which shows you basically that the projections are a function of probabilities, right? And these different scenarios and whether or not they might happen. So they're estimates. There's lots of uncertainty about whether they could happen. It's highly unlikely that we'll be at the top of that graph. To me, the point is not to think about the technical assessment, argue about whether we should use H++ or not, but rather to understand that these changes are going to happen. And I think in California, we're very fortunate to know that we have a shared appreciation that the sea level rise is going to happen. The questions are exactly how much and when, right? So I think the message is that we need to focus less on which projections you use and more on what are you going to do about it when it happens? And that's the idea of the pathway, right? So figuring out what to do when you start seeing the conditions that are of concern. And next slide. So you saw this earlier. These are Cosmos projections for shoreline erosion at UCSB. And it's a little hard to make out, but the shading is the uncertainty bars. You can see that basically there's a wide range of what might happen and when it might happen. So the critical thing is to ask, what should we do when it starts to happen, not which of these projections we use in our guidance or in the plan. And so UCSB has used a 2-meter projection for 2100, which is more than enough to inform this plan in terms of structuring future actions. Next slide. Now, this is the last point, which is the point about actionable planning. What do we mean by that? And this figure, I don't know if Commissioner Eckley recognizes it, but this came out of a report that I did funded by OPC last year, talking about what is actionable planning, adaptation planning. And so two points I want to make here. One is it's about bringing that vision and the upper level of objectives, the Coastal Act in your case, and integrating that down the process through LCP planning, through technical studies and specific adaptation strategies, through implementation, through monitoring, through funding, and back, right? So you need to have that pathway of action informed by what your ultimate vision and goals are. And the other point are the feedback loops. So we need to keep revisiting what happens over time as we implement these actions and make sure we're still on the path to resilience, not on a maladaptive path. And we might need to update things, including the vision, perhaps, depending on what happens, right? So the next slide is another example, just to tell you where we're headed with this. The Campus Lagoon, an amazing resource. It's a perched wetland above sea level rise. It's one of the areas where we talk about a strategy. Next slide. The Commission and the university have had a long ongoing dialogue about what to do with this particular mouth, right? That is vulnerable, and maybe even then in the next major storm season could catastrophically collapse, drain the lagoon, which is perched, and we don't want that to happen, right? So the question is, what are the actions to take as sea level rise starts to happen? And it is happening. And the Science Committee for the university, in its wisdom, said, you know, we want to make a transition here from a closed lagoon to an ocean-influenced system, recognizing what sea level rise is going to do here. So the question is, well, how do you do that? Right? It's a very technical question. Hydrology's technical, complicated. There's lots of habitat. Habitat is going to change as water levels change. So we need to understand that better. The first step down the road in this pathway is to do that study and understand what actions specifically should be taken to make sure we make that transition to an open ocean lagoon system. How to do it. So that's the next step that the university is focusing on. I'm not sure if that's in the next slide or not, but no. So it's an example of how you take this idea of actionable planning, recognize that, you know, it doesn't really matter exactly what projections we're using. We know this is going to happen. So how should we take action in the future as it starts to happen? And that's, the critical step for this plan. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I am available for questions.
Thank you so much for all your work. I just am so appreciative of it. All right, do we have any other public speakers?
No other speakers for this item.
Any other staff response?
Yes, I'd just like to make a brief comment, just to thank the university. And as you notice, we didn't have any suggested modifications on this. And that's because the university was such a good partner. And as you saw, they like to say thank Sherry Hammond and Charles Lester, of course, one of our previous executive directors. And as you could tell from Charles's speech, sea level rise adaptation is in his soul. And it shows. It shows in this amendment. So we were able to work with the university to address a lot of the issues that we brought up. There have been problems, as you saw in those slides at university. There's some parts of that university that are subject to hazards. And we have been negotiating with the university for as long as I can remember, decades, on what do we do about this. It's sea level rise, it's shoreline protection, or it's plant managed retreat. But it's difficult, some of those pinch points that you saw in those photos. So we think this is a good plan. The work's not over. There's room for another update. We need to get down to a few more details, but this provides a really solid framework. So I just wanted to thank the university and just note that we think this will be a good example. We hope it is an example for other jurisdictions.
Thanks, Mr. Hudson. All right, bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Eckerly, Kate, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Huckelbridge, you have something.
Sorry, I apologize. I wanted to just add my thanks to the university, also to Dr. Lester for sharing today. Again, just to say, kind of repeat a little bit about what Director Hudson said, I think it was important for us to make sure that this item was heard before you today, in part because we do think it provides a good example of how, there are a lot of sticky issues we're going to need to be dealing with. They're going to look different in every jurisdiction. And I really commend the city for taking this approach and thinking through a process. And I really appreciated the pathways approach. And I think it's something that we want to be sharing more widely, again, with our local government partners, with our other university partners as well. It's a good model to think through these issues. I liked a lot of the points that Dr. Lester made about allowing for visioning, feedback loops, and ways to address scientific uncertainty. So it's not a question of sticking to very specific timelines that have a great deal of uncertainty associated with them. It's thinking through, okay, when this thing that we know is happening is going to happen, what are we going to do about it? And focusing on the pathway to get there and not fighting too much about the specific, is this going to happen in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years? So I just wanted to, we thought it was important to bring this before you today as a good example. And we hope folks are listening, and we'll be pointing people to this discussion in the future as a way to think through some of these sticky issues. So thanks to the university, thanks to Charles, and that's all.
Thanks so much, Dr. Huckelbridge. Commissioner Eckerly.
Dr. Huckelbridge stole all of my points. But I will just reiterate, I just wanted to thank Dr. Lester for being here and for your presentation and your ongoing partnership with the Ocean Protection Council and all of this work. I want to reiterate Dr. Huckelbridge's point about this being a great example. We talk about adaptation pathways all the time, but it's this concept and really having on-the-ground examples and collecting those examples as we continue to do this work, I think is really important. And then finally, I just wanted to share with everyone that one of the priorities for the SB1 grant program is that community visioning component of the broader work. So it is really important, and it is a priority for our investments. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Nottoff.
I too wanted to appreciate the reminder that local adaptation strategies need to also work for the state as a whole. And it is, while we want to be able to be flexible at a local level, we also want to remember the big picture as we're planning for these changes. And I also wanted to just encourage, it's great that there's such a rich wealth of information and passion at the UC Santa Barbara. But just next door, where a lot of students live in Isla Vista, there's a very dangerous situation on Del Playa Drive. I have friends who have students that go to school there, and there's been very dangerous situations. So I hope that the university is sharing its knowledge with the county that is responsible for that area where so many of the students of the university live. It's a very dangerous situation, and my understanding is that the county hasn't quite grappled with the situation nearly as effectively as the university has. So I'm concerned about that, but it's great to see this from the university. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bochco?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to personally say hello and thank you to Dr. Lester. It's very good to see you again. And I've been aware of your good work over the last several years, and we also appreciate it. I also just like to point out for people who haven't been on the commission for a long time, that this is truly, in my mind, a large leap forward in terms of counties, cities, universities accepting this principle that sea level rise is inevitable, unpredictable in certain ways, but necessary to deal with now. And I so appreciate this. I just am reminded of our little subcommittees we used to have 5 or 10 years ago with the cities, where managed retreat was a dirty word. You couldn't say it. They asked you not to say managed retreat out loud because people would just freak out. So I think this is a wonderful strategy to go forward in showing people that if we plan way ahead of time and don't deny the facts, we may be able to handle this in a really intelligent way. Thank you, Dr. Lester.
Thank you. I just want to make a quick comment. And I've spoken with you, Dr. Lester. I've also spoken with Commissioner Eckerly, our director, and others about my great concern for our state parks and public lands in the state of California. When I see something that is so excellent as applied to UCSB, it just, again, the need for us to address our disappearing state park lands and what the impact is going to be, especially as people need to more and more have access to them with what's going on inland. So I just can't express more strongly. I'm so appreciative of the work you've done, and I know you've done work looking at the state park lands. And I just really encourage us to continue to focus on that as a critically important need here in the state of California. But thank you so much for your presentation here today. It was excellent. UCSB is so lucky to have you down there. So thank you so much. Entertain a motion at this time. It's on page 5.
I'll make it.
Commissioner Noroff.
Yes, I move that the commission certify the University of California at Santa Barbara Long Range Development Plan Amendment Number LRDP-4-UCS-24-0001-1 as submitted, and recommend a yes vote.
All right, we have a
Second.
motion by Commissioner Noroff. I think Commissioner Harmon wanted to make the second as our Santa Barbara. I love it when there's competition for the second.
I thought you might not want to make the motion, but remotely. But I'm sorry if I stole your motion.
All right, we have a motion.
No, that
and a
was
second.
perfect. Thank you.
Could we have a roll call vote, please, Vanessa? Thank you.
Commissioner Escalante?
Yes.
Escalante, yes. Commissioner Herman?
Yes.
Herman, yes. Commissioner Lowenberg? Yes. Lowenberg, yes. Commissioner Noroff?
Aye.
Noroff, yes. Commissioner Turnbull Sanders?
Yes.
Turnbull Sanders, yes. Commissioner Uranga?
Aye.
Uranga, yes. Commissioner Aguirre?
Yes.
Aguirre, yes. Commissioner Bochco?
Yes, I think you forgot Commissioner Wilson.
I did.
It happens sometimes.
Did you vote?
I'm still
Did you
saying
vote?
yes.
Commissioner Bochco? Butchko, yes. Commissioner Cummings?
Aye.
Cummings, yes. Commissioner Wilson?
Yeah.
Wilson, yes. Chair Hart?
Yes.
Hart, yes. The vote is unanimous.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, we'll now move on to our next item. I believe that's item 13.
Yes, thank you. Item 13 is the Deputy Director's Report for the South Coast District, which includes 4 permit waivers, 1 immaterial amendment, and 3 permit extensions. In addition, the Deputy Director's Report also includes a memorandum responding to objections received to 2 separate but related immaterial permit extensions that were reported at our June hearing. Those 2 emails were received from members of the public whom are listed in the memo for this item, objecting to the 1-year time extension of 2 CDPs by Ocean Avenue LLC and Community Corporation of Santa Monica to redevelop the Miramar Hotel in Santa Monica with 312 hotel rooms and 60 market rate condos in conjunction with a new 5-story multifamily residential building with 42 affordable rental units for low-income households. As explained in detail in the memo, the primary contention raised by the opponents is that the project will adversely impact scenic views and light as primarily enjoyed by the neighbors in adjacent buildings. Staff would note that the standard of review for the original CDPs is the consistency with the Chapter 3 policies of the Coastal Act. Potential effects of the approved development on public views were fully evaluated by the Commission in its approval of the project, and the Commission found the project would not result in significant impacts to public views. Private views and light, as discussed in these 2 letters of opposition, are not protected as coastal resources under the Act, nor do the comment letters provide evidence of any changed circumstances. Now, pursuant to Section 13169 of the Commission's regulations, in order to deny a permit extension request, objections must identify changed circumstances that may affect the consistency of the development with the Coastal Act or certified LCP. It does not provide an opportunity to rehear the merits of the project. And for these reasons, the Executive Director has determined that there are no changed circumstances affecting the previously approved development's consistency with the Coastal Act. And we recommend the 2 immaterial time extensions be approved today. In addition, last night we received an email from a member of the public objecting to a different item in the Deputy Director's report, the immaterial amendment being reported today for the Seaside Living Trust. And that amendment is for a 120 square foot, 3.5 foot high rooftop structure atop an existing duplex and some remodeling of that structure located in Playa del Rey. The person objecting raised issues related to private views, construction impacts, and community character effects from the 3.5 foot high roof access structure. These issues were fully addressed in the findings, and staff does not believe that any of these issues result in significant impacts to coastal resources. Thus, we continue to recommend this item be approved as an immaterial amendment today. Staff is not aware of any opposition to the other items being reported, and we're asking whether 3 or more commissioners object to any of the items in the Deputy Director's report. Staff is available for questions.
Thanks, Mr. Hudson. Any speakers?
We just have 1 speaker, Robin Rudisil.
All right, Ms. Rudisil.
Hi, good morning. I'm speaking as an elected board member of the Coastal San Pedro Neighborhood Council of the City of Los Angeles. The Neighborhood Council sent an official letter opposing the project at 1032 Paseo del Mar, also known as 3733 Emily in San Pedro. Staff was copied on our official letter. It was dated February 22nd, 2024. And knowing how important I know public participation is to you, I don't understand why our opposition wasn't even mentioned in this de minimis waiver, so the community and the commission could be aware of it, let alone no contact with us to better understand why we oppose the project. We represent the coastal San Pedro community, and there was a lot of community and neighborhood opposition. The work we do as an elected but volunteer arm of the city is important and useful and should be of interest to you. This was a very controversial project, one of the most controversial in my 4 to 5 years on the Coastal San Pedro Neighborhood Council Board and as its land use chair. And I know the neighbors expected this dual zone project with neighborhood council recommendation for opposition would have a coastal commission hearing and full analysis. So I hope you will give them that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. No further speakers?
And we also have 3 available for questions.
All right, Mr. Hudson.
Okay, I would just note we are available for any questions if the commission has any.
Okay, bring it back to the commission. Are there any objections to unanimous concurrence? All right, Commissioner Herman has dropped off. So the commission will concur on this, and going forward until she rejoins, we'll move forward with a unanimous consent approach. And that brings us now to item 14B.
Thank you. Item 14B will be presented via Zoom by Vincent Lee, a coastal program analyst in our South Coast District office. If we could pull up the PowerPoint, please.
Yes. Good morning, commissioners. Next item, item 14B, is the hearing for a local coastal program amendment by the City of Long Beach to update the certified 1989 Victory Park design guidelines by adopting the new Victory Park Santa Cruz Park design guidelines. The standard of review for this IP amendment is whether the amendment is in conformance with and adequate to carry out the provisions of the certified land use plan. Next slide. Victory and Santa Cruz parks are shown in blue in this aerial photograph of the subject area. These parks primarily consist of the landscaped area between the sidewalk and the buildings along the south side of the Ocean Boulevard, which is a busy commercial corridor. And these areas are primarily used by pedestrians. The LCP amendment will update the current 1989 Victory Park design guidelines relating to site organization, allowable architectural elements for park improvements, site amenities, native and drought-tolerant landscape planting, operations, and maintenance. Next slide. The new guidelines are consistent with the certified LUP's designation to encourage public use of the park as open space. But the guidelines contain a policy, Guideline 2.4.1, that requires trees and vegetation on park property to be regularly pruned to maintain or enhance scenic viewsheds. As raised in the public comments from Ann Cantrell and Russ McCurdy that have been posted on the Commission's website for this item, there are concerns about the potential of that guideline to impact nesting habitat for coastal birds that are protected under the LUP. As proposed by the city, the subject amendment is not adequate to ensure that future tree trimming activities would avoid potential impacts to nesting or roosting birds. Thus, suggested modification 1 would add a requirement to the city's adopted coastal tree trimming policy that ensures protection of coastal habitat for nesting birds. Pursuant to this modification, it would be clear that any tree trimming or removal activity within the Victory Park Santa Cruz Park area will be conducted in a manner that maintains bird habitat post-tree trimming, replaces any trees that must be removed, and complies with environmental regulations, including the certified LUP, Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and the Coastal Act. Members of the public also commented that the guidelines favor park spaces with native landscaping and hardscaping that would not be conducive to normal park activities. However, these parks are mostly used for passive recreation like walking dogs, accessing adjacent businesses, and providing outdoor lunch spots for workers in this area. Thus, access would not be adversely impacted. In addition, providing more native vegetation is in line with the policies of the certified OCP. Staff would just note that there is a staff report addendum that is posted on our website to respond to these comments in greater detail. Slide, please. In closing, staff recommends that the Commission certify LCP amendment request number LCP-5-LOB-24-0020-1 with one suggested modification necessary to assure protection of habitat for wildlife that is ecologically important to the coastal zone. There are two motions to carry out the staff recommendation, which can be found on page 5 and 6 of the staff report. And this concludes staff presentation. We are available for questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Any ex partes? Surprisingly, no. All right. And do we have speakers on this item?
Yes, we have 3 speakers. We'll start with Ann Cantrell, followed by Russell McCurdy, and then Anna Christensen. Ann Cantrell is moving in as a panelist, and when you're able to speak, please begin.
I would like to request that Russell go first on our PowerPoint.
Okay. And Russell, you're also in as a panelist. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, so I'm new to this, and I hope can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So first off, I want to say thank you very much that you did amend the comments to include protecting the trees. I just want to give you a quick overview. Could we go to the next slide, please? So historically, we had a lot of really good trees. This is what we have currently at the International Tower, which is at the eastern end of the thing. Next slide, please. And so now you can see that other places have trees, even if it's a small little parklet. All these little parklets are different sizes and they're not uniform, which is actually okay. Next slide, please. And you can see down here, this is the Opera Towers. There are lots of trees, and then another thing where there's more trees. Next slide, please. Here is implementation of the new guidelines. As you can see on the left, there's a recently completed historic building, and there's like 1 tree in the whole front yard. In the right side, there's a much bigger space. It's called the Camden Apartments. And that grass looks appealing, but it's actually artificial turf. And so we do have a few palm trees, but you can see that mostly it's just bushes and a few palm trees. This is not very helpful to the wildlife. It's not very helpful to the birds. Next slide. This is the new front for the new, the Breakers Hotel has been renovated. It's about to reopen. They have just done the new landscaping in front. And you can see that there's a driveway with a walking path along the driveway to the front door, but there are no benches. There's no place for, so the guidelines of the Long Beach thing say, sorry.
Thank you. Ann Cantrell.
This is Ann Cantrell. Good morning, commissioners. I'm a 91-year resident of Long Beach, and I love my city and our parks. As you can see on this slide, there is no place for walking, sitting, or playing. And it's all hardscape and native plants. Next slide. Here's another inviting park example. There is some grass with stone benches, but the row of trees along the sidewalk make the area appear to be the building's private property, not a public park. Next slide. We agree with staff's suggested modification number 1 to add the city's adopted coastal tree trimming policy to the guidelines to ensure protection for coastal habitat for nesting birds. We also suggest planting only trees known to be used for nesting and roosting by shorebirds. As seen here, great blue herons prefer the tallest trees that can support their large nests. In El Dorado Park, they use pines. In Alamitos Bay, they use palms. Next slide. Birds do not pick their trees because they're native. Black-crowned night herons prefer full leafy trees such as non-native ficus and coral trees. Next slide. Snowy egrets also enjoy the camouflage provided by ficus and coral trees. Next slide. In conclusion, please deny approval of these guidelines as presented. Direct the city to eliminate the hardscape and plant more trees and more grass and I'll try that again. Plant more grass and bird-friendly trees to make this a truly inviting park space. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Anna Christensen.
3D. I'm actually here in person, representing the Los Cerritos Wetlands Task Force. We support the speakers. I also was born in Long Beach and am a longtime resident. And if you can imagine, if you've been to Santa Monica and walked along the bluff there, that's what this bluff used to look like. I don't know if these buildings would have been approved had you been on the case back in the day, but what we basically have is apartments that are lurching over what was a one long big park with a beautiful view of the ocean. And pretty consistently, these developers have made it look as much as possible like the park space is their front yard, their front lawn, their driveway. And it's only with concerted pressure by people such as Ann Cantrell and other local residents that there's been any access and any ability. We had a demonstration for International Women's Day on the grass. Normally, okay, grass is out, you know, cactus and gravel is in. But here, it really, anything that we can do to make the public feel that they have the, you know, that they have the right to sit down or throw a Frisbee or gather for a rally, you know, on what is truly our only downtown public park, other than the new park, which has no trees or much else. So please at least try to amend this to at least allow the option of having grass, not plastic grass. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then we also have 4 speakers from the city of Long Beach available for questions.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Bring it back to staff.
Yes, through the chair, if I may, we just wanted to respond to the few claims. So the park, as we understand it, primarily serve as passive recreational space, and all the amenities for the new proposed design are such as benches, sidewalks, and drought-tolerant native vegetation. Staff understand they're consistent with the LCP requirement for drought-tolerant landscaping. And the park primarily serve as passive recreational space. Regarding the removal of a tree, we have added reference as suggested modification number 1 to require any tree removal to have a replacement tree on the site. And that is a 1-to-1 ratio for removal of any tree and mitigation at a 2-to-1 ratio for replacement of trees that were known to have supported nesting.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure, just a second. All right, so does that complete staff's response?
Yes, thank you. We're available for any questions.
Okay, great. So bringing it to the commission, Commissioner Nara.
I just had a question on that 1-to-1 replacement then. So, does it have to be in kind? So could you go from a leafy tree that provides habitat to a palm? Because those are the pictures we're seeing, is that palm seems to be in.
Yes, per the CDP, the local CDP requirement, I understand, as we understand it, there is a minimum size requirement for those replacement trees, but I don't think there is a requirement for like in kind for the type of tree. And I believe the city staff could further clarify if they're available.
Because it seems like we want to be able to preserve habitat, equal habitat. So that's one question I had, is to, if everything's going to be one type of tree, that's not going to provide the diversity of habitat that is needed or that is currently enjoyed.
All right, and through the chair, if I may. I would just note that, as you saw, many of these parks have existing palm trees now, and palm trees are consistent with their landscaping scheme. I don't believe that the LCP amendment specifies what replacement has to be, as Vince had mentioned, in kind. So a leafy tree could be replaced with a less leafy tree or a palm. But for that type of detail, I would suggest, since the city representative is here to answer questions, that we could direct that question to the city.
Okay, would you like to hear from the city?
Yeah, does the city have a
My
response
understanding
to
the
that?
city's available.
Okay, I see. They're being promoted in as a panelist right now.
Well, looking for the city of Playa, can I interject? Okay. One of the important aspects of this park is that we have parklets throughout the city. Some are very accessible to the public, some are not that accessible. These parks right here are adjacent to a very busy arterial street, Ocean Boulevard. The ability for someone to go out there and throw frisbees at a park like this would be very dangerous. So amenities for people to enjoy, quote unquote, the park in that way would not be advisable. But I can see the need for more trees, vegetation, to make it more appealing. I can see that. But in terms of recreational uses, I would not recommend those parks be used or be activated in that way because of the dangerous aspects of being adjacent to a very busy thoroughfare.
Yeah, my question was mostly about habitat.
Is the city available?
I think she's there.
Okay.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for hearing this item today. My name is Allison Spindler Ruiz. I'm the planning manager for the city of Long Beach. I worked on this project for many years as a staff planner, and I'm delighted for it to be before you today. You may know there's a set of existing Victory Park design guidelines that are still legally in place today. Those were developed in 1989, and they are a bit antiquated. So they have certain requirements like you must include a bench that is made by XYZ person who makes benches, who no longer does that. So we do have some challenges in implementing those existing guidelines. For the past couple of years, staff has really tried to work with applicants to meet the intention of the guidelines we've been working to draft, but getting a new set adopted would really help us to meeting, I think all of our goals today related to climate and habitat. So there are existing palm trees there, but with these updated guidelines, we're proposing to no longer allow new palm trees. I think that was a time several decades ago where that was sort of the destination idea was to have palm trees along Ocean Boulevard to really create that sense of place. But of course, we understand the environmental trade-offs and would much rather a tree landscape and palette that allows us to best benefit habitat. So a couple policies. I'm going to point out a couple policies. One of them is guideline 2.10.9, which reads that trees should be selected to provide shade, visual consistency, or visual interest. Existing shade trees should be preserved if possible, and if removed, should be replaced with signature trees. And trees of the same species and formal plantings should be the same size and form. We do have our landscape specialist, Alex Muldrow, here. He's been the project manager on this effort. He knows a lot more about trees than I do. So if we want to get into more details about species selection and how we came up with the palette and how we did that based on our climate goals and priorities, I would be happy to do that.
I don't think there's any need for that. You've had very you clarified that very well. Thank you for your further information.
Okay, Commissioner Aguirre?
Thank you. To your point, I just want to add that I think it is important to think, not just replacing in kind and palm tree by palm tree, but increased tree coverage, because it not only provides habitat for coastal species, but also helps us reduce, urban heating in our fight against climate change. So I would encourage the city to continue, as you develop those guidelines, to take that into consideration, not just to make up for the deficit, but to add on to the baseline. That was that. And then my question is more around why weren't there benches and signage? If this is a public space, and to Commissioner Uranga's point, maybe it's not an active recreation space, but from what we heard from the comments, it could be a passive recreation space. So what about those amenities, so that people can understand that these are public spaces by our coast? And I would like to ask that question from the city.
All right.
Yes.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the question, Commissioner. So absolutely, the guidelines do have requirements related to signage and seating. And I do think that having updated guidelines, there's way more depth in these proposed guidelines than what's in the old ones, which, like I said, have become a little bit hard to implement because of their age and the way they were structured. And it is a balancing act, though, for us. So this is a public park. It's the city's first dedicated public park back from 1889. However, you probably saw it's maximum 80 feet in depth along what functionally sometimes can act as like a front lawn for those developments. And so our goal here is to make it look, feel, and act more like a park. So that signage piece and the benches and the placemaking were really critical components to this process. So within the guidelines, there's a whole lot of content about requirements and need for seating, for placemaking. To Commissioner Uranga's point, it is more focused on passive just because of being right next to that thoroughfare with several lanes of traffic today along Ocean Boulevard. However, we want it to look, function, and feel much more like park space for our downtown area. So I can point you, for example, to section 4.1 in the proposed guidelines, which relates to benches, seating, and tables. And I'll pull it up, but there's a related section specific to signage and the importance of demarking and notating this as a park.
Yes, that's great, because I remember when we were down there, there was a lot of opportunities for walking around town, not just driving, but walking, and that having these types of parks, I think, really encourages pedestrian and even bike activity. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Uranga, did you have further comments?
No further comment other than I'm ready to make the
Okay, would you like to make the motion?
If available. I'm ready.
you.
I mean,
Please.
no further comments. I move that the Commission reject amendment number LCP 5-LOB-24-0020-1 to the City of Long Beach Certified Implementation Plan as submitted by the city. I recommend a yes vote.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Council, Commissioner Harmon's going to be abstaining. Can we go with a unanimous consent approach here, or do we need to?
Yes, that's fine.
All right, so asking the commission if there's any objection to a unanimous, this would be a yes vote on motion 1. Seeing none, the yes vote is recorded. We'll move on to motion 2, please.
Okay, I move that the Commission certify amendment number LCP-5-LB-24-0020-1 to the City of Long Beach Implementation Plan if it is modified as suggestion in this staff report. I recommend a yes vote.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I'll turn to the commission and ask if there's any objection to a unanimous yes vote on this item. Seeing none, the motion is approved, and that concludes that item, I believe, and we will be moving on to item 15B.
Thank you. And item 15B will be presented by Jeff Palm, a coastal program analyst in our South Coast District. If we could pull up the PowerPoint, please.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. Item 15B is the hearing for a coastal development permit for the annual Big Bang on the Bay event, a one-day event that includes a ticketed block party and fireworks display. The applicant is the Boys and Girls Club of Long Beach. Next slide, please. To provide some background, Big Bang on the Bay has been held as an annual event since 2011. Until last year, a CDP was not required for the event pursuant to the Commission's guidelines for the exclusion of temporary events. The Commission approved a CDP for the 2023 event, which included 11 special conditions to comply with the coastal access and recreation policies of the Coastal Act and to ensure protection of marine mammals, birds, and other species of concern. Following last year's event, Commission staff contacted John Morris, the previous agent, in January of this year to learn if Naples Restaurant Group, LLC, the former applicant, had plans to hold a 2024 event. John Morris informed Commission staff that the Boys and Girls Club of Long Beach, in coordination with Mr. Morris, would be applying for a CDP for a July 3rd, 2024 event. Commission staff attempted to coordinate a pre-submittal meeting with Mr. Morris, which was not answered. In February, an application was still not received, and Commission staff again requested a meeting with John Morris and the organizers of the event to discuss the event and associated CDP application. Mr. Morris informed staff that a permit application would be submitted the following week. However, no application was received, and Commission staff were contacted by the Boys and Girls Club of Long Beach on April 30th, requesting assistance to apply for a CDP for July 3rd, 2024 event, and received the subject CDP application on May 15th. Given the timing of the submittal and the fact that the application was incomplete primarily due to the applicant's failure to provide an alternatives analysis to the use of fireworks, it was not possible to process the application in time for the Commission's June meeting in time for a July 3rd event. Thus, the applicant chose to revise their application to postpone the event date to September 1st, 2024. The applicant submitted an alternatives analysis on June 28th, which reviewed environmental and non-environmental impacts associated with a water-based fireworks display, a land-based fireworks display, and a drone show. The applicant asserted that it would not be feasible to prepare a drone show in time for the September 1st, 2024 event date, given the short timeline to receive airspace approvals and arrange a drone show. Next slide, please. As shown on this slide, the proposed block party would be primarily located within Alamitos Bay Landing in southeast Long Beach. The proposed fireworks display would launch from a barge in open coastal waters of Alamitos Bay, equidistant from Alamitos Bay Landing, Naples Island, and the Long Beach Peninsula. The entire event area is located on open bay waters and filled state tidelands. Therefore, the site is within the Commission's area of original permit jurisdiction, and the standard of review is the Chapter 3 policies of the Coastal Act. Next slide, please. The block party would begin at 5:00 p.m. and end at 9:30 p.m. on September 1st, and as shown on this slide, involves the temporary use and closure of public walkways, public areas, approximately 50 parking spaces, and part of the Marina Drive right-of-way north of the Boathouse on the Bay restaurant. The block party area would be fee ticketed and perimeter fenced. The fee is proposed to be $100 per adult and $50 per child, with options for premium VIP seating at higher price points. All net proceeds would benefit the Boys and Girls Club of Long Beach. Temporary development within the block party area includes the installation of vendor booths, food trucks, a DJ concert stage, seating areas, as well as a fireworks staging area and safety zone. The fireworks show would begin at 9:00 p.m. and last approximately 20 minutes. The applicant proposes to use fireworks made of biodegradable, non-plastic materials. The applicant is also proposing to hire a consultant to conduct bird and water quality monitoring before, during, and after the event. The fireworks would be visible from numerous surrounding locations. The applicant's proposal is for a 5-year permit. However, the applicant did not submit an adequate alternatives analysis for the Commission to consider all feasible alternatives for future events, including a drone show. Additionally, the applicant's alternatives analysis failed to provide adequate scientific evidence to support their conclusions regarding potential impacts to bird species, marine debris, and water quality. Furthermore, this year's event would be held on September 1st, with future events held on July 3rd. The alternative July 3rd event date, which occurs during nesting season, may also involve potential coastal resource impacts greater than those for a September 1st event date. Therefore, Special Condition 1 authorizes this approval for only the one September 1st, 2024 event and requires future CDP applications to include a comprehensive alternatives analysis. Next slide, please. According to the bird monitoring report for last year's event, 25 bird species were sighted, with 8 species confirmed to be nesting within the vicinity of the event prior to the fireworks show. While active nests were identified within the vicinity of the event last year, the nesting season of many of the species that occupy the subject site concludes on September 1st. Therefore, the proposed date of the event reduces potential impacts to nesting species, given there are fewer nesting individuals in September in comparison to the initial and proposed future July 3rd event dates. The report concluded there was no permanent disruption to the nesting birds since all nestlings observed the day before as well as the day of the event were present following the event. However, the data from last year's event suggests there are potential temporary impacts during the event as the total number of birds and species declined following the fireworks show. Thus, it is important to monitor this year's event as well as evaluate feasible alternatives to fireworks to ensure permanent impacts are not imposed. Although the Commission's ecologists conclude drone shows would minimize impacts to birds, the applicant asserts that a drone show is not feasible for a September 1st, 2024 date given timeline constraints. In order to ensure protection of coastal wildlife, Commission staff recommends several special conditions consistent with last year's approval to address potential impacts associated with noise, light, and debris by limiting the length of the fireworks display, require monitoring of the event, implement mitigation measures if nests are identified within the event vicinity, and submit monitoring report results from the event within 30 days. Next slide, please. Following last year's event, the applicant submitted a fireworks debris monitoring report that stated a total of 280 grams of firework debris was collected following the event. The applicant estimates 5% of the pre-ignited weight of the fireworks ends up as debris following the event. However, the monitoring report from last year's event did not identify the total weight of the fireworks prior to use. Furthermore, collection efforts did not take place in the entire 600-foot fallout radius as depicted on this slide. Given that fireworks debris was found and the debris is known to adversely affect marine resources, staff recommends Special Condition 6, which requires the applicant to collect firework-related debris within the entire fallout area to ensure sufficient collection efforts. If collection efforts do not account for the full 5% estimated firework debris weight, the applicant must mitigate for these impacts by collecting additional marine debris within the vicinity of the event to account for the difference in expected fireworks debris with fireworks debris collected following the event. In order to minimize potential marine debris from the block party, Special Condition 5 requires the applicant to submit a marine debris reduction plan, meet all mandatory requirements, and implement a service plan for adequate recycling, trash bins, and compost. The marine debris reduction plan is intended to ensure that plastic pollution from the block party portion of the event does not enter the receiving waters of Alamitos Bay. Should event trash disperse into the environment from the block party, Special Condition 6 further outlines cleanup procedures following the event, which would require the applicant to search for and recover event trash periodically following the conclusion of the fireworks display, in addition to the previously discussed firework debris cleanup requirements. Next slide, please. Parts of the Alamitos Bay Landing would temporarily be closed with fencing and other structures that restrict the general public from using a public road, public parking, public walkways and areas, and boating docks from the block party highlighted in yellow on this slide. Public access adjacent to the site would be maintained, which is represented with blue dashed lines. Following last year's Big Bang on the Bay, Commission enforcement staff confirmed the event was held in non-compliance with several special conditions related to public access. Specifically, the event prevented public access with private security guards, fencing, and ropes along the pedestrian walkways. Commission enforcement staff sent a letter to John Morris, the agent of last year's permit, regarding these violations. The Boys and Girls Club of Long Beach is the applicant for this subject event, is aware of these previous violations, and has assured Commission staff that public access will be maintained. Given the temporary public access impacts due to the proposed event, staff recommends Special Conditions 7A through 7D, which require the applicant to maintain public access to and along the public bulkhead walkways during the entirety of the event, grant boater access to all boater docks, headways, and gangways within the vicinity of the block party site for the entire duration of the event, install signage for wayfinding and to denote the public access areas versus the fee-ticketed block party areas, and submit a public access compliance report after the event to ensure public access was maintained during the event in compliance with the special conditions due to the violations of last year's permit by the previous applicant. Next slide, please. In closing, staff believes the proposed project, as conditioned, is consistent with the Chapter 3 policies of the Coastal Act and recommends that the Commission approve this application with 11 special conditions. The motion and resolution can be found on page 5 of the staff report. Staff would like to note an addendum was posted to respond to comments primarily related to marine resources, water quality, and air pollution that were substantially addressed in the staff report. Additionally, staff would also like to note the applicants are in agreement with the staff recommendation and all conditions of the permit. This concludes staff presentation, and staff is available for questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for that excellent report. Are there any ex partes? Once again, no ex partes on for Commissioner Uranga. All right, public speakers?
Yes, we have 8 speakers.
Okay.
Donald Rodriguez in person from the Boys and Girls Club.
And the rest are online?
Yes.
Okay.
We have one public speaker in person as well.
Okay, please.
Good morning, and thank you. I'm Don Rodriguez, CEO of Boys and Girls Club of Long Beach. And this is our fundraising event on September 1st, Labor Day weekend. We are providing this fireworks show for the city of Long Beach and Seal Beach. We're trying to give back to the community that has supported us for over 80 years to allow us to do our mission to help the youth at Long Beach. And we have support from the community. We have the Long Beach, Seal Beach, and Alamitos Bay Yacht Club. We have the Naples homeowners and the Peninsula homeowners that have provide 80% of the funding for the fireworks show. We're also able to allow our members who normally would not have a chance to go to a fireworks show or come down there. We're going to be providing our youth an opportunity to see the event. So on behalf of the community and the youth we serve, we appreciate your time on this, and I'm here for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Next
Thank
speaker.
you. Next is Brent Mardian, who's on Zoom. And after Brent Mardian will be Anna Christensen, Ann Cantrell, and Gordana Kadger. Brent Mardian.
Hi, I'm hoping this is working.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Brent Marty, and I work with a company called Pi Environmental, and we do a lot of the monitoring and support of this show as well as several other shows in the LA region. And I've been working with the board hand in glove to look at the regulations on this and kind of come up with some appropriate monitoring measures. So a couple things in your staff report that are of issue. First of all, there is a reported value for how much that fireworks show starts off with in terms of net weight, and it's reported to the LA board as part of their attachment C in their permitting process. And when you go to have a show, you report that at the end of the show. So we pretty much know how much percentage-wise comes off of those, and it's much less than 5%. In fact, some of these shows have 1,500 pounds of fireworks. And on that particular show, we found about 26 pounds of trash. That was also kind of a land-based show. On the water side, there's somewhere between 500 and 600 pounds of fireworks that we've seen reported. We find somewhere between 2 and 3 pounds of trash. So we're not finding a lot of trash. And I think what's important for the staff to recognize, not only is this on the water, not only is it at night, but there's very limited lights. And there's also, in the case of Alamitos, a lot of boats going through the area, disturbing the trash. So, what we've done and what we found over 10 years almost of monitoring is that if you follow the wind and you follow the smoke, that leads you to where the fallout is, where most of the debris is captured. 100% debris capture in something like this is not possible. It's impossible to think you can capture every piece of debris that falls in the water if and when it falls in. But we try to capture as much as possible. So the 5% is a little, odd, because I'm not sure totally where that came, because that information exists. Couple other things real quick. This show is not a surrogate for illegal fireworks. It's commercial, it's regulated, and that's important to recognize. If I could finish that thought. I can just tell you that the types of debris that come off of a show like this, not this show in particular, but all these shows that we monitor, they're all very similar, is different than the illegal grade of fireworks that come over the border. It's cardboard. A lot of times there's no labels. That's
It's
part
great.
of the requirement.
Thank you so much, sir. We
Yes,
heard
ma'am.
from our
Yes, ma'am.
staff person regarding the
Thank you.
biodegradable nature of the.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Anna Christensen, followed by Ann Cantrell, and then Gordana Kadger.
Thank you. First, I'd just like to thank you for not allowing the show to go forward this July 3rd. Really appreciated. We have a slideshow. This is from Sierra Club.
Yes, give us a second to bring it up.
Sure.
We'll stop your timer.
And Ann and I are from the Los Rios Wetlands Task Force, but we are also part of the Sierra Club California has supported our position on this through our coastal subcommittee. The Big Bang is a bust. End fireworks pollution. Protect public health and Alamitos Bay. Next. Alamitos Bay is only 258 acres, too small and fragile to accommodate polluting fireworks displays. And then there's a list, which you can see in front of you on your slides, and the size of other other bays, all of which I believe probably have fireworks shows. Next. Alamitos Bay beaches and waters are popular, accessible, affordable to all, and at risk from fireworks and other pollution and debris. We are the direct line down from Norwalk, Cerritos, inland communities. Our beaches are packed. I went out and took photographs of wall-to-wall people. Next slide. Trauma is not seasonal. Rookeries deserve protection all year long. Our nesting season actually officially ends on September 30th, not the 1st. That was a misstatement by staff. By September 1st, most chicks can fly, but these rookeries are used these rookeries are used all year long. Great blue heron young also don't leave their nests once they can fly. The birds on the left there are from the Alamitos Bay Marina, and they continue, and they need protection past September 1st. Thank you very much. Next slide. Okay, this is too long to read. I'll just, Ann Cantrell will take over at this point.
Thank you. Ann Cantrell, followed by Gordana Codger, and then Natalie Claggett. Ann Cantrell.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. If you Google, you'll find studies of the long-term effects of fireworks on birds show the following: panic, loud noises, bright lights, disorient birds, disrupting their natural behaviors. Stress. Birds rely on their acute hearing, making them extremely sensitive to high fireworks. The shock of explosion leads to increased stress levels. Flight. Birds flee from fireworks and may fly to new and unfamiliar areas. This can just deplete their energy reserves, resulting in inability to survive. Foraging. Birds must spend more time looking for food. Sleeping. Birds must have up to 2 hours, may have up to 2 hours less sleep on nights with fireworks, and some never return to their roosts or nests. Nesting. Infant mortality leads to decline in population. Fireworks cause parents to abandon nests, leaving chicks subject to cold and predators. Next slide. Next slide. In 2012, the Coastal Commission took the fight to ban fireworks shows and protect coastal rookeries to the California Supreme Court and won. In Alamitos Bay, the Commission continues to permit Big Bang fireworks shows, denying us Coastal Act protections even as our coastal rookeries fail, our marine life suffers, and our community recreates in an increasingly polluted environment. And I might add that no special can mitigate the air, water, and noise pollution from fireworks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Gordana Codger, Natalie Claggett, and then Kristen Northrop. Gordana.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Gordana Cager. I'm a member of the California Environmental Rights Foundation. I'm a resident of Long Beach, and I participated in the Clean Water Act litigation involving the Big Bang on the Bay in Long Beach a couple of years ago. First, please let me say that I have a huge appreciation for your staff and the manner in which this application was handled. It's been a headache, and the professional and respectful manner in which coastal staff has handled this is just amazing. It demonstrates their integrity and the public process that is open and safe and open to all the members of the public. You're already aware of the circumstances which led to John Morris, the former permittee, to move the application then was given to the Boys and Girls Club in Long Beach. He was the applicant last year. I want to remind you that your staff report notes that the commission enforcement staff confirmed that last year's event was held in non-compliance with several special conditions to public access. What is important in the end is that this event is the same fireworks show in the same place. And I would like to simply urge you to consider the conditions of public access that were required last year and to ask that the Boys and Girls Club comply with those same conditions. Specifically, Special Condition 7 of last year's event called on the applicant to implement a shuttle program for free pickup and drop off for the general public from a convenient location in the area. This shuttle service never happened, and I provided eyewitness evidence to coastal staff of that fact. This is another point of non-compliance that was evaded with the change in applicants this year. The event location makes it practically impossible for the public to reach Alamedas Bay by car that afternoon until way after the event ends. The parking lots in the vicinity are inadequate. Please amend the permit conditions to include a free shuttle service. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Natalie Claggett, Kristen Northrop, and then Nancy Okada. Natalie Claggett.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry, having a little difficulty with my headphones. 1 second. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. My name is Natalie Claggett, and I am also a member of the Coastal Environmental Rights Foundation. And I echo Gordana's comment regarding non-compliance and a failure to follow express terms of California Coastal Commission's permit last year, and no additional facts have changed or suggested that they will follow all of the permit conditions this year. I also echo the concerns about the impacts on birds, wildlife, and the impacts on local residents and attendees on the smoke and toxic chemicals being released into the atmosphere. I'd also like to note that Alamedas Bay has been on the 2024 303D list, has added copper, is now impaired for copper, and historical fireworks shows in the bay and historical monitoring has shown spikes in copper after the fireworks show. And given the new listing, I think it's imperative that we prohibit any future fireworks in the bay to stop causing and contributing to that copper impairment. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Northrop.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Kristen Northrop, and I am policy advocate. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, the clock just wasn't started. Thank you. I'm policy advocate for Coastal Environmental Rights Foundation, also known as SURF. SURF has been actively monitoring and challenging fireworks discharge over coastal waters for more than 10 years. Fireworks significantly impact our coastal environments, from major air pollution and harmful effects on wildlife to debris and metals and chemicals leaching into our waters. In 2023, the fireworks show in Long Beach that occurred at Alamedas Bay was a blatant disregard of the CDP conditions. I noted that ash and debris fell down all around myself and other spectators and into the water. Also, as Natalie just mentioned, Alamedas Bay has been listed as an impaired for copper, one of the pollutants found in fireworks. It came back in higher concentrations in the post-event monitoring. Fireworks have also been proven to have health risks to those who, from the toxic smoke and affect the air quality. The amount of smoke emitted from the show is very hazardous and abundant. The use of drones or other environmentally friendly displays would be a better alternative to fireworks. I appreciate all your work on this matter, and thank you very much.
And thank you. Our last speaker, Nancy Okada. Nancy, you should be able to unmute on phone now.
Okay, you can hear me now, I'm sure.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yep. Great, wonderful, thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Nancy Okada, Chair of the Coastal Subcommittee, Sierra Club California. We support the Los Cerritos Wetlands letter, and environmental impact of fireworks is well known, the debris, the air quality, all the detrimental aspects of it, and really the drone shows should be used to replace them. But more importantly, it's all the stress that it causes on the local wildlife, and not only the birds, but also the other little critters that are just trying to exist. If we really do not want an urban area to become wildlife deserts, we really need to educate special event producers about the harm that these fireworks shows cause. And other people have stated it before, but it would really be good if this application could be denied. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Back to staff.
Yes, thank you, Chair. There are a few comments that I wanted to address, just briefly respond to in regarding to the applicant's environmental consultant discussing the 5% value of fireworks debris. That value is actually submitted in the applicant's best management practices report, so it's not staff's value, that's the applicant's value that was provided. The condition was designed in such that we understand that 100% of the fireworks debris feasibly can't be collected, but the idea is to mitigate for the debris that is not collected. And so that's some background behind the 5% value. In response to the date of the nesting season, it is true, just for clarity, that the LCP, the nesting season, goes through September 30th. Our point here is just that for September 1st, 2024 event date, the amount or number of individuals nesting is expected to be far less than those during the July 3rd event date. So just wanted to clarify that point. And then you did hear a number of comments in relation to last year's event being held in non-compliance with several of the special conditions. Just want to point out that the event was held in compliance with the special conditions surrounding monitoring of birds and water quality. We did receive all of the respective monitoring reports, and all was held in compliance in regards to those special conditions. Did mention that the public access, there were some special conditions that were held in non-compliance, and so we utilized the same special conditions regarding public access from last year's report and modified them slightly in such that they are required now to submit a report to actually demonstrate that they were in compliance with those public access special conditions. And additionally, we've had thorough conversations with the new applicant regarding this, outlining our concerns to ensure that public access is in fact maintained for this year's event. And then with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Hudson should he have any additional comments.
Thank you, Jeff. And that'll close the staff comments. I just note we're available for questions.
Okay. Thanks very much to both of you. Bring it back to the commission, Vice Chair Escalante.
Thank you, Chair. I just, I've been really appreciative of our members of the public who have been for years, talking to us and expressing their concerns about all of these negative impacts from the fireworks. And I definitely have, I've learned a lot. And every year it just worries me more and more. Just all the impacts on the coastal resources, on wildlife, on people, on pets, on air, water quality. I mean, you name it. And to me, this love of blowing things up for fun, I think it's sort of an expression of human beings' worst nature. I think we evolved, we used to love gladiator shows, and then we were like, oh no, we realized that's terrible. Circuses, chaining elephants, we finally evolved from that. I think it's time for us to evolve away from fireworks, especially in these areas of poor air quality attainment zones. I was in Dubai last December and didn't expect to, Dubai to be a bastion of sustainability at all, but I was surprised to see them use drone shows instead of fireworks. But then I realized, I understood it's because their air is so dirty and so terrible. A, you couldn't even really see the fireworks. But B, I think it's very clear to them that that makes their issues worse. So Dubai has evolved. I think that California can evolve, and we need to move away from this fireworks show, especially on the coast. So I agree with, I appreciate the staff's work in terms of putting conditions around this, but I think from this point forward, I'm just gonna be a hard no on fireworks. Thanks.
All right. Commissioner Cummings.
Thank you, Chair, and I just want to thank everybody for the comments today. This is a little bit challenging for me in particular, just due to the fact that, we made it pretty clear last year what the expectations were moving forward. And the notion that, and I just want to preface that I do have my commercial drone pilot's license, and I used to teach classes on flying drones to students so that they could get their FAA certified license. And just looking at the flight map, I mean, this site is within a controlled flight area because it's near an airport. But you can apply within 90 days of whatever project you want to deploy for an exception through the FAA. The flight deck there is restricted to 100 feet, but I would imagine if you're shooting on fireworks, was just Googling online, it's averaged between 200 and 500 feet, which means that those fireworks are being shot into controlled airspace, and there's some authorization that is necessary in order for them to shoot fireworks in that controlled airspace, which means that there has been enough time for the applicants, given that it was a year, for them to get the clearance in order to fly a drone display within that same controlled airspace. And so I'm really disappointed in the fact that we're being told that there's not enough time for them to get the clearance, when obviously if you have a year's worth of time, you can get the same clearance for fireworks that you could get for, or sorry, the opposite, you could get the same clearance for flying drones that you could get for shooting off fireworks. So that's just really concerning for me that we tried to provide an alternative and that was more or less ignored. So similar to Vice Chair Escalante, just given the circumstances, and I feel like we're pitting the Boys and Girls Club against the Coastal Commission at this point. And we all up here want to support the Boys and Girls Club, and we want to support these kinds of activities, but there needs to be better trust moving forward that we're going to be able to work through what we can, provide that is safe for our environment and then also meets the objectives of what the community wants. And so I'll be supporting the staff recommendation today, but just want to clarify this idea that there's not enough time and we couldn't get the authorizations because of the fact that there was a year's worth of notice, and there's plenty of time to get that authorization, because I know that in order to shoot fireworks within controlled airspace, there's also a need to get that same kind of clearance. So I'll end my comments there, but just wanted to make sure that folks were aware that there was enough time and opportunity for us to have a drone show in this area. Thank you.
Commissioner Uranga?
Oh, one point of clarification, there was not enough time. There might have been enough time for the permits, like you say, for the air, but not for the commission. And that's where that came in. So there was a misunderstanding about whether the applicant had enough time to review an air show as opposed to having the application be reviewed and being able to conduct the show. So it had nothing to do with that. It had to do with us, with the commission, and our being able to agendize it, approve it, and then going forward for September. Mr. Hudson, is that correct, or am I somewhere else?
I'm sorry, I missed that last part. Could you repeat that?
No, I'm saying, am I correct or am I somewhere else? In terms of the time limitation for the applicant to review a a drone show as opposed to fireworks.
Yes, that is correct. And through the chair, if you like, I could provide, if it's helpful, a brief history of what happened with the permit application this year.
Well, that's okay. I don't know.
Well, let's hear from Commissioner Aguirre, and then we'll...
Well, I'm not done.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Commissioner
Still saying.
Uranga. Excuse me.
Well, the point is that even with a drone show, there are a lot of other elements that come into play with that. Air quality, wind, as an example. This event is a very important fundraising event for the Boys and Girls Club and for other nonprofits. This show has been going on for how long, Don? How long has this show been going on? 15 years. At least. And every year, the commission has approved it, with conditions, of course. Now, the prior applicant failed this last year through no fault of his own, health conditions, couldn't comply, couldn't get there. So the application fell through failed to make some hoops, and therefore was canceled. But the Boys and Girls Club, because of the importance to it, and other nonprofits chose to postpone it from July 3rd to September 1st or September 1st, so that they can at least not lose that much fundraising opportunities. I'm somewhat disappointed that, I was encouraging them and staff to look at a multi-year application, but that is not being on the table here today, but hopefully in the future, and I encourage it. I agree with the evolution of events to go into perhaps, drones and a drone light show, but that's not what we're looking at today. What we're looking at today is this show here. I encourage staff and the Boys and Girls Club to work together for future events, and perhaps we can make that happen. But at the same time, I want to also point out that there are other factors that come into play here that might affect a drone show that might not be able to make it feasible for one because of the air quality during that time. I might have to cancel, and then they lose all this revenue. So I don't want that. I don't want to see that. And certainly I don't want the Boys and Girls Club to lose because of that. And on a personal note, the Boys and Girls Club resides in the west portion of Long Beach. It's part of my district. And I've been to a number of groundbreaking events for basketball courts, pickleball, table soccer, and I see the effects that those monies have on the Boys and Girls Clubs in providing them with the ability to provide services for kids. It also is across the street from Cabrillo High School, which is in my district, which provides areas for them to go do homework and stay out of trouble. So my encouragement for the Boys and Girls Club to continue to submit this application year in and year out is going to always be there, whether it's a drone show or fireworks. But in the previous years, this Coastal Commission has approved this event with conditions provided. But I think that it's feasible and it can continue. And I look forward to future events that they put into it. And I really encourage my colleagues to please consider this event for this year. Next year will be another opportunity for them to come back, and perhaps we'll see something better. But I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, and for all your work in the community, for everything you do. They're very lucky to have you. Commissioner Aguirre?
I agree. They're very, very lucky to have you, and appreciate all the work. And I appreciate the fact that this is a fundraiser for a nonprofit that serves community, especially underserved children that potentially don't have the ability to, have leadership developing capabilities and other types of programming. And I really appreciate staff's efforts to, create the necessary conditions for us to be able to get this to a yes. However, last year I had concerns regarding public access, and I continue to have those concerns, especially now with, some of the issues that came to light. I also have concerns relating to the wildlife and the habitat and the water quality, despite the conditions developed by staff to ensure that we protect those areas. But for me, ultimately, just like it was last year, it's the issue of closing access to the public. and I've done it in my own city. There's an event that is going to happen this weekend that closes off our major stretch of beach because of the ability to sell alcohol. It's when you put chain link fences, right? And I just can't get over that thought, and I couldn't support that. And unfortunately, as I mentioned to Commissioner Uranga, I just cannot support this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Noroff.
And I just want to say that I appreciate that there's been a change of applicants in the last year, but I remember this issue quite well when it was before us last year. It was one of the first meetings that I went to, I think, and we had this same conversation about the impacts, and I've gotten educated about the fireworks impacts. We hear about it quite regularly about Mission Bay in San Diego County. So I was under the impression last year when we said yes that this year we would see a proposal for, if it was going to continue, it was going to be drones and lasers. So I'm kind of surprised to see this now. I don't know if it was a snafu in the change of applicants or what, but I don't, it seemed like we can't, I wouldn't be comfortable doing a permit that didn't just say this is the last one or something, right? So I see you nodding your head. Do you have some response to that?
Mr. Hudson.
Thank you. And through the chair, I was nodding because that is the story. And I appreciated you bringing that up because I did want to offer an overarching comment and explain what our strategy is and why we're recommending approval of this year's event. The commission did, this was the issue, exactly as you explained last year. So there is a sense of deja vu. The commission was very concerned about the potential for these impacts from fireworks, and you directed staff and the applicant, who was Mr. Morris last year, to work together and come up with a good alternatives analysis, an adequate alternatives analysis that took a serious look at drones and light shows as an alternative to fireworks. And of course, that was a clear direction to me, but that didn't happen. Now, what did happen is that application should have been submitted right away. When it wasn't submitted by Mr. Morris, we became alarmed and we reached out to that previous applicant in January and again in February and March. Each time we were told that he intended to submit and would do so right away with the alternatives analysis. We didn't receive that. What we did, then we had radio silence, and it wasn't until mid-May that we had heard from Boys and Girls Club, and there were some snafus. They were unaware of these problems, and I think they were caught by surprise that they wouldn't be able to do the show in June, and that there was this lack of time. We still had this remaining issue, the alternatives analysis. Because there was simply no possibility to get an application on for an application submitted in May and get that to you in our June hearing with any sort of alternatives analysis, we did invite the Boys and Girls Club to rejigger their application and shoot for a September show, which they did. We committed to work with them to try to bring this application back so that there would be this chance for a fundraiser for the Boys and Girls Club. The alternatives analysis we received, though, it just wasn't adequate to resolve all these issues, and those were the issues we laid out in the staff report on why it's inadequate. We do plan, and I just want to reiterate that history that Commissioner Uranga laid out was correct, and we do, as Commissioner Uranga mentioned, plan to work together with the Boys and Girls Club to try to hit this issue this year. We've done that in the special condition that requires that the applicant, the Boys and Girls Club, or any successor, submit their application by no later than January 15th, and it specifies that it must include this alternatives analysis. Now, I think that would give us enough time if it is not a complete application to work with them. My goal is to bring this back for the next event, which our understanding is not a September show, but they intend to apply for a July show. That we would be able to present you with that information, clearly of what is involved with drones. Are they feasible? Do they result in less impacts? I do believe it is feasible. There are other shows in the area. The city of Fillmore, a nearby city, had a drone show this year. The city of Ventura had 2 drone shows in their harbor. So we know that these things are feasible. I think in the end, it's just going to come down to this question that we could bring to you all of, is it a big bang event or a silent drone show? Is it because one is more desirable than the other, and be able to present those these questions to you all. So that's our goal and our strategy. For this year's show, although we didn't have an adequate alternatives analysis, we believed we had enough, given that the show was being held late in nesting season and the possibility and potential for adverse impacts to nesting birds was greatly decreased. But that's also the rationale for why we have the special condition limiting this to just the one-time event, not the 5 years that was asked for. So with that, I'll close my comments and just know we're available for more questions.
That's very helpful, and I do want to just flag that this is not an issue unique to this area. I mean, we are hearing regularly in general public comments that people have concerns about the environmental and impacts of fireworks. And, you know, I grew up loving fireworks as much as everybody else, but as I said, I've been educated being on the commission. And I understand, you know, there are alternatives now. And I didn't know we had a licensed drone pilot on the commission, just one more of Commissioner Cummings' skills. So maybe you could work with the commissioner to come up with a good alternative analysis. But thank you very much for that. I too am struggling a lot with this one right now.
Commissioner Bochco.
Yes, very, very briefly. I concur with everything our commissioners have said. I would not approve again a fireworks show. I have also done a little research, and I read this report by, is it Sierra Club? Yeah, which is very, very helpful for anyone who wants to know why fireworks are not a good idea. But I can understand the bureaucratic problem that occurred. I support Commissioner Uranga and everything he does. And so I'll support this one, but never again.
Thank you. Any other comment?
More an opinion than anything else is that, you know, our society has adopted and accepted fireworks forever. We at Long Beach prohibit fireworks. But on 4th of July, it's a war zone. I mean, there's like fireworks all over the place, LA included. And there's nothing we can do about it. People in neighborhoods, but where we have control, and I agree, where we have control, we control it, and we try. But until fireworks go away, we're gonna have them. And so the best we can do is work the best way we can to make them safe, to give people an opportunity to enjoy them in a safe way so that there aren't major hazards created by fireworks, fires, and et cetera. Of course, the major concern with what is being brought here is the issues with the effects on birds and the effects on fauna and wildlife, trees. And I can see that. But our human nature is we like to see bright things and hear the explosions. But until that goes away, we're going to be dealing with this issue. And, you know, while I would love to have a drone show or a light show, fireworks right now is still an entertainment that people look forward to every year, especially around 4th of July. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Harmon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to briefly associate myself completely with Commissioner Bochco's comments, and to the extent that it's helpful for me to be on record for any potential future applicants, I will be supporting this today, but don't see myself voting in favor in the future. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your efforts to be part of the meeting today. I know it hasn't been easy, but we really appreciate it. All right, any other comments or questions? I associate myself with the comments of all of my colleagues. I'm going to support this today, but I think it's pretty clear this will be the last year that the commission will support the fireworks. All right, so I think we need a roll call vote at this time, please, Vanessa, on this one.
Is there a motion?
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, we need a motion, a second, and then we'll
I'm
have a roll
happy to
call
second
vote.
the motion.
You'd like to make the motion, Commissioner Uranga?
Sorry. I move that the commission approve coastal development permit number 5-24-0399 pursuant to the staff recommendation and recommend a yes vote.
I'll second that motion and speak to my motion, which is I concur with a lot of what the commission has said today. I'm not absolutist in my never again, but I'm certainly leaning that way. But I do want to say what the special circumstance in this case, or in the case of using these explosives in the coastal zone, is that the very unique nature of the environments in which that occurs, which are estuarine systems, which are the thinnest, most special ecosystems on the planet. And so it appears to me that this type of activities in those spaces have a compatibility issue. So with that, I'm seconding.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second, and now we'll ask for roll call vote.
Commissioner Harmon.
You're on mute, Commissioner.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Harmon, yes. Commissioner Nuttall.
No.
Nuttall, no. Commissioner Turnbull Sanders.
Yes.
Turnbull Sanders, yes. Commissioner Uranga.
Aye.
Uranga, yes. Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Wilson, yes. Commissioner Aguirre.
No.
Aguirre, no. Commissioner Bochco.
Yes.
Bochco, yes. Commissioner Cummings.
Aye.
Cummings, yes. Commissioner Escalante.
No.
Escalante, no. Chair Hart.
Yes.
Hart, yes. The vote is 7 yes, 3 no.
All right. Thank you very much, and thanks for all the work that went into that item. And we're now going to continue on with what I think is our final item, item 16A, the Gladstone's issue.
Thank you. And item 16A will be presented by Shahar Amate, a coastal program analyst in our South Coast District via Zoom. And if we could pull up the PowerPoint, please. And Shahar, take it away.
All right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Item 16A is a coastal development permit amendment application by Gladstone's Legacy Group, LLC, also known as Gladstone's, in County of Los Angeles, Department of Beaches and Harbors, for the continued use of a state-owned public beach parking lot and beachfront public viewing deck by the Gladstone's Restaurant from January 13th, 2022 to January 13th, 2027. The applicants also propose implementation of a public deck and parking management plan, as well as reopening of a public beach parking lot adjacent to Topanga Lagoon. Next slide, please. As shown here, the Gladstone site is located on the seaward side of Pacific Coast Highway, immediately inland of Will Rogers State Beach.
1 second.
We need to get the slides to Billy. They weren't handed
Okay.
over.
Just a moment.
Give us a second.
Okay, there we go, Mr. Amate.
Thank you very much.
Do we need to go back one or, no, this is slide one. Okay, we're ready.
This is slide one. Do you want me to start again or?
I think that'd be helpful.
Sure. So item 16A is a coastal development permit amendment application by Gladstone's Legacy Group LLC, also known as Gladstone's, in County of Los Angeles, Department of Beaches and Harbors, for the continued use of a state-owned public beach parking lot and beachfront public viewing deck by the Gladstone's Restaurant from January 13, 2022 to January 13, 2027. The applicants also propose implementation of the public deck and parking management plan, as well as reopening of the public beach parking lot adjacent to Topanga Lagoon. Next slide, please. As shown here, the Gladstone site is located on the seaward side of Pacific Coast Highway, immediately inland of Will Rogers State Beach within the Pacific Palisades area of the city of Los Angeles. The standard review for this area is the Chapter 3 policies of the Coastal Act. The Topanga Lagoon site, approximately 1.5 miles to the north, is within the County of Los Angeles Santa Monica Mountains area. The standard review for the Topanga Lagoon site is the County of Los Angeles Santa Monica Mountains LCP. Next slide, please. This slide shows a closer view of both the Gladstones and Topanga sites. The Gladstones project site is comprised of the restaurant concession, the associated LADBH operated public beach parking lot. The Topanga project site consists of an existing dirt parking lot that has been closed to the public for several decades, which is proposed to be reopened. Next slide, please. Violations of the Coastal Act have occurred in the past on the Gladstone site, mainly relate to the management of the public deck and public parking lot. Violations related to the public deck include the restaurant's use of the public deck for service area beyond the expiration of the term limit, the lack of required signage indicating the deck is for public viewing without any purchase required, the exclusive and private use of the public deck, and restaurant staff denying public access to the public. Violations related to the parking lot on the Gladstone site include the lack of or removal of required public parking signage and the placement of unapproved signs, including signs with language that could mislead the public to think that the parking lot was private. Apparent reservation of parking spaces closest to the restaurant and beach for restaurant use. Failure of valet operators to park 2 vehicles in tandem spaces, thereby not maximizing the parking capacity of the lot as previously required. Delivery of incomplete parking monitoring data, and an increase in parking rates without the required CDP, which is inconsistent with the terms and conditions of the underlying CDP. Next slide, please. Commission planning and enforcement staff have worked with the restaurant and the county to resolve the violations on site. The Gladstone's restaurant has initiated changes to ensure their staff are aware of the public's ability to use the deck and add signage to advertise the availability of the public deck to visitors. Furthermore, as conditioned, additional requirements above and beyond what the restaurant has proposed for the public deck will reduce future impediments to the public's use of the public deck moving forward. The applicants work with the commission staff to also flesh out parking lot management and signage plans in order to ensure fair and balanced parking rates and hours that are in line with nearby public county lots that are adequately advertised, which provide public access opportunities at the Gladstone site. Staff notes that there is an addendum to this item that modifies the parking lot hours to ensure that early bird parking starting at 6 a.m. is provided year-round, and that the parking lot closes at 9 p.m. at least during the summer, and during the winter season would be open when the restaurant is open and closed no earlier than 6:30 p.m. Staff recommends the term of the restaurant's use of the public deck and parking lot be 5 years from the date of commission approval, which is August 9, 2029, or when the restaurant is redeveloped and open to the public, whichever is first. Next slide, please. Commission planning and enforcement staff have also coordinated with the applicant to incorporate additional mitigation for past public access violations at the Gladstone site as part of this amendment to reopen to the public an existing closed dirt parking lot at the Topanga site located just up coast of the restaurant. This proposed mitigation is intended to address past adverse public access violations on the Gladstone site. As shown on this slide, the reopened parking lot is proposed to be surfaced in order to accommodate ADA access and have 53 parking spaces that will have parking rates and hours, again in line with the other county public beach parking lots. The lot is proposed to remain open indefinitely, although, as reflected by Special Condition 13, it may be potentially reconfigured for a future CDP if and when the lagoon is restored, which is a project currently being evaluated by state parks in partnership with the Resource Conservation District and the county. As such, the proposed mitigation would open parking facilities that are currently unavailable to the public and thereby increases opportunities for the public to access the coast. Staff notes that Special Condition 13 also includes various measures to ensure that the reopening of the Topanga parking lot would not result in adverse impacts to nearby natural resources. Next slide, please. In closing, staff recommends that the Commission finds that the proposed project, as conditioned, is consistent with the Chapter 3 policies of the Coastal Act and the county certified LCP. Thus, staff is recommending that the Commission approve item 16A, subject to the special conditions listed on pages 5 through 23 of the staff report. The motion to accomplish this can be found on page 5 of the staff report. This concludes the staff presentation. Staff is available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amate. Are there any ex partes? All right, are there public speakers on this item?
2 speakers, Mandy Sackett and Eugenia Ermacora. Mandy
right.
Sackett.
Thank you.
Hello, and I have a PowerPoint if possible.
Yes, we have your slide. We'll bring it up.
Thank you. Good morning or good afternoon, Chair Hart, commissioners, and staff. Andy Sackett on behalf of the Surfrider Foundation. Surfrider greatly appreciates staff's dedication to resolving this issue at Gladstone's. Eugenia with our LA chapter will speak more in detail about our position, but from a statewide perspective, private use of a public parking has major access implications and warrants serious mitigation. And we feel that the mitigation that staff recommends is substantial, but leaves some room for improvement. There's currently, one concern that we have is that there's currently a project going through the EIR process now. It will be before the commission in the future to restore Topanga Lagoon where the alternative parking would be located. And that Topanga Lagoon project could potentially eliminate the alternative parking because construction is supposed to start in 2027. So we're a little worried about the overlap there. We feel strongly that additional mitigation to improve public access at the site of the violations should be included in the permit amendment. There are 2 access ways at both ends of the parking lot that are in disrepair. So we are asking that those ramps be rebuilt or improved to help improve access, especially for those who cannot or prefer not to scramble over the riprap and rebar. So here are a few photos just to show that the access ramp is kind of in the middle. It's eroded away and kind of ends into the riprap there. Next slide. It's a lot of riprap. This person's doing a beach cleanup, but it's close to one of the access ways and people do have to scramble. Next slide. So this is another perspective of one of the ramps that kind of just goes right into the riprap. Next slide. And this is the other access way. So we think the commission needs to send a really strong message that privatization of our public access points would not be tolerated and that this is an issue we take seriously. Please consider adding access ramp improvements to the staff recommendation so we can have some local.
Thank you. Next, Eugenia Ermacora.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Hart, commissioners, and staff. My name is Eugenia Ermacora, and I'm the Los Angeles chapter manager for the Surfrider Foundation, representing our community members. I want to start by thanking you for your thorough review of the Gladstone permit amendment and for incorporating several of our chapter suggestions into the special conditions, especially condition 3, which ensures the maintenance of portable public restrooms near the site, and condition 12, which mandates the implementation of plastic reduction programs such as our Ocean-Friendly Restaurants Initiative and requires a service plans for trash and recycle bins down coast Gladstone. While we fully support the staff recommendation to address public access violations at Gladstone, we remain concerned about the ongoing issues at Sunset Point Surf Break. The frequent closure of the adjacent parking lot continues to restrict safe access to the beach, forcing visitors to park in hazard areas along the Pacific Coast Highway. Additionally, the proposed alternative parking at Topanga Lagoon is located about 1.7 miles away, which results in roughly 40 minutes walk. This distance is a significant barrier for many visitors, particularly those with families, mobility issues, or carrying beach gears as surfboards or such as others. We hope that future improvements can address the access ramp and potentially add showers, which will greatly enhance the public experience at this particular location. In closing, thanks again for considering our input and for your ongoing efforts to protect public access in our coast. And we look forward to continuing our work together to ensure Los Angeles County beaches remain accessible and welcoming to all. Thanks again.
Thank you. And then I'll just note that we have Warren Ontiveros from the LA County Beaches and Harbors Department in person and available for questions.
Okay, thank you. I just had a quick clarification from Mandy Sackett, whether the photo that she showed with the boulders, was that at Topanga Beach where the Topanga parking lot is, or is that at Will Rogers?
I'll give it a second as Mandy comes back
Or Mr.
in.
Amate may be able to answer.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just getting brought back into the meeting. Eugenia actually might know that 100%, but my understanding is that it's from the Gladstone Sunset parking lot.
Okay. Mr. Amate, do you have any responses to the comments?
Yes, if I may. So we do recognize several of the comments that Surfrider Foundation has had in our staff reports. So their comment letter is directly incorporated as an exhibit, and we did include special condition modifications to special condition 3 and 9, which would include the county servicing the portable bathrooms that are further down coast than the parking lot, the Gladstone's parking lot, as well as making sure that trash cans also along that stretch of beach are maintained. And so the county has been amenable to that. Other suggestions about the ramp access and the repairs to those, the county has not agreed to that at this time. They did mention intent to fix those in the near future. We do think, however, that the additional early bird parking from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., the rate structure and memorialization of that do ensure that there's increased public access also to the Gladstone site as compared to the current condition. And then there's also the mitigation piece, which is the Topanga Lagoon site reopening, right, of that parking lot. And so we do think that as a comprehensive package, it checks all the boxes.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Amate. I mean, I just was at Gladstone's and I saw that one ramp down right by the restaurant provides access. So these are other ramps in other areas, I guess. Is that your understanding?
Yes, further down
Okay.
coast, yes.
Okay. Could you clarify whether Topanga is a beach, whether that parking lot provides access to a beach?
So the history behind that is that it was, from our understanding, there was a closure of that dirt parking lot, which was available up until the 1980s. There was closure in 1987, more or less, and that was not done through permit. And so we have been making sure through this permit action that there is reopening of that parking lot, and yes, it should allow for pedestrian access to Topanga State Beach at that location. We do understand that it will be reconfigured and there might be some reductions in parking in the future as part of the restoration, the lagoon restoration project. But at this time, we believe that inclusion of the reopening through this permit will allow for additional public access.
And there is a beach below that parking lot. I guess that's what I'm, okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to, and thank you, commissioners. I just had a couple questions on that. And now I'll turn to the commission and ask if there are any additional questions or comments.
I'm happy to move the motion.
Okay, I do have one more comment then before the motion. Since I've been commenting, I'll just continue on. So one of the things that I found when I went to Gladstone's was that the signage was there, but it still gave the impression that it's not really available to the public, even though the signage says that it's a public deck and a public restroom. I didn't see any members of the public. Everyone there appeared to be patrons of the restaurant. So one strong suggestion I have that I'd love to see incorporated is signage on that pathway right next to the restaurant. It's the ramp that goes down to Will Rogers Beach. So maybe halfway down, indicating that there is a public deck and a public restroom at the top of the ramp at Gladstone's, because I think when it's within, even though it's on the entrance to the restaurant, so would it be possible to incorporate something like that into the conditions? Mr. Hudson's nodding. It would be.
Yes, we would be happy to incorporate that. I would just first ask Mr. Amate if our condition already allows for that flexibility. If not, we can add in a clarification.
Yeah, I do not think that includes it right now. It is pretty specific, the condition that we do have, and so yes, we could incorporate that directly into the conditional language.
Yeah, so just to be clear, so then staff modifies our recommendation to include a clarification of a special condition that there be signage on the path.
It's like a ramp that goes down. It's obvious.
Yes.
Where it is. Okay. Thank you very much. All right, on that note, seeing no other comments, Commissioner Wilson.
And this motion includes the amendments that were just discussed. I move that the commission approve the proposed amendment to coastal development permit number 5-91-141. Pursuant to the staff recommendation, I recommend a yes vote.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Ask for roll call vote.
One, just real quick
You
point
have
of
some
discussion.
comments? Sure, of course.
What city were we in when we had, when we went to that little shell place? Little shells.
I'm trying to, there was a, I'm trying to remember the last commission meeting we were at, was it Morro Bay? Where there was signage outside of all of the little restaurants, right, in the main kind of, I don't know if it was the Embarcadero kind of area, and it was so clear. There were so many signs that, you know, said that this was public access, the deck was public access, the restrooms were open. So just as an example of that, and I'll turn it back over to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, so we'd ask for roll call vote.
Commissioner Nuttall.
Aye.
Nuttall, yes. Commissioner Turnbull Sanders.
Yes.
Turnbull Sanders, yes. Commissioner Uranga.
Aye.
Uranga, yes. Commissioner Wilson.
Yep.
Wilson, yes. Commissioner Aguirre.
Yes.
Aguirre, yes. Commissioner Bochco.
Yes.
Bochco, yes. Commissioner Cummings.
Aye.
Cummings, yes. Commissioner Escalante.
Yes.
Escalante, yes. Commissioner Harmon.
Yes.
Harmon, yes. Chair Hart.
Yes.
Hart, yes. The vote is unanimous.
All right, fantastic. So I think that's our final item for this meeting. I'd like to thank AGP for the excellent job they did. Billy, Ray, Anthony, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Vanessa, so much for everything you do. And all of our staff and commissioners. We'll see you next month in Monterey on September 11th. Thank you, everyone.